Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. We're going to paint Watson. Now I know in the last couple videos when I said, oh, we're going to do this, I was calling him Winston, and when those went through edits and they get approved, and I was like, I'm calling him Winston. Well, I knew a golden retriever named Winston, but his name is Watson. And I found him out on the internet. It was a free picture on Google. And so we can paint him and use him, and you can turn around and sell your portrait. But more than anything else, you can, those of you that are looking for careers and stuff in painting, you know, hanging on to a few of these real, you know, nice paintings, especially today we're going to do alla prima. And it's a very nice portrait technique, and you hang on to those, and it allows you to make your portfolio of designs that you can show potential customers and clients. So anyway, what I have here is I'm going to do him up 16 by 20 here, and I'm putting it on a board. This is a quarter-inch sheet of lightweight sandy ply, which I do like to use. You could use a canvas. If you do use a canvas, make sure that you fill in the canvas weave, or you use a portrait weave for it, because we do have some nice hair detail that we want to get in there. And sometimes the weave, if you don't fill it up properly, you know, with something like a gesso, or if you're using Heritage, we have the canvas prep medium, which is, you know, higher quality than a gesso. But anyway, that weave will distort some of your strokes. And, you know, alla prima originally came, you know, from the 16th century, and was Frans Hals, who was a contemporary painter of Rembrandt. But and Hals did, you know, he had this feeling of more stroke work, of more quick, undefined or unblended areas of the painting. And you know, of course, Rembrandt did lots of textures and everything. And when I was over in the Netherlands and studying over in the Rijksmuseum, and I got the chance to go look at a lot of halls, and I've also studied halls in our National Gallery in Washington, D.C., you know, he was like Rembrandt, used very thick paint and built up and did these, as it was described, these rapier-like strokes onto the canvas. It had so much power. Well, that became alla prima, basically what it is there, the Italian version of it, into alla prima, which is basically, there's a lot of tenets of alla prima, but a lot of artists use it different. So you'll find all kinds of artists using it different, and that's a good thing. That really is a good thing. But it is... generally, overall, you try to finish it in one setting, because tomorrow you're going to be a different artist. And it was generally done with oil, so it was done wet on wet. And of course, I'm going to paint acrylics. I'm going to paint pure acrylics. As a matter of fact, alla prima I paint all the time. I can slow it way down where I finish the whole painting while it's wet with the acrylics, with using extenders and a new medium that's coming out called open medium. But I don't care for that, because I'm a half-tone painter. I love half-tones. I'm a tone painter. And I believe if you shift your eye to a tone rather than a blend, you do a much better job on the capturing the image. Anyway, kind of like I finished the other one that you saw back there. It's been framed. It's getting ready to go up into the gallery. The wolf that you see back there, that is my Father's Day gift to myself tomorrow. That's for my, you know, they say, oh, tomorrow's Father's Day, you know, take Father's Day off. What are you going to do? I'm going to paint. You know, that's kind of funny. You're a professional artist. You paint and you get a day off. Yeah, I'm going to paint. But I'm going to, because I just enjoy what we do. But that is a fantastic technique. I'm going to work it kind of a modified alla prima and a premier coup technique together. And I'm going to use Anders Zorn's palette. Now, if you don't know Anders Zorn, everyone who studies fine art, and you go to the fine art schools and everything, is, you know, everyone paints the Zorn palette. The Zorn palette I've studied for several years, about 12 years now, and it is a limited palette. It's a black, a yellow, a red, and a white. And it's fantastic. And so I'm going to paint the wolf with that timber wolf with that painting tomorrow. I'm kind of excited about it. All right, let's get into this. So what I did was I prepped the board here with a medium white. Usually what I do is I find some type of really warm undertone that is going to come into the dog somewhere, and then I'll prep the board, or I'll do white and I'll glaze the canvas or the board or whatever surface you're using with that color. That just assists into your painting. I try to keep it on the light side. There's a lot of people that say for olive primer and everything, you should never paint on a pure white canvas. I totally disagree with that. There's a lot of other artists that disagree with that, but I don't argue. Everybody has their own techniques and how they approach it. And like I said, that's a good thing. But this helps you see the colors and stuff. So when I go to put out my palette, I'm going to try to find everything here in Watson. And I may call him Winston a couple times today, but just let that go. Put that off till I'm getting older. But I put my colors out on my glass. This is my glass palette that I like to use here. This is a 14 by 18 glass palette, 1/4 inch thick glass palette. And I put my colors out onto it, just straight acrylic. What I do is I just, squirt the colors right out here, right, as I need them there. And I have out here for colors, I have a Hansa Yellow, a Diarylide Yellow, Yellow Oxide. These work fantastic on the Golden Retriever. I used, on the last Retriever that you saw me paint, that I just did a thing, I also had out a Naphthol Red Light. But I didn't use it that much, so I eliminated it on this one. I might regret that and have to put it back on. But most of the darker tones that you see over here onto him, that Naphthol Red Light would be assisting on, is into the cooler side of the dog. Right here on all the cool side, we have the warm side and the cool side. So I eliminated it, and I'll be moving my palette to 2 cool colors again, like I like to use the Quinacridone Violet and the Red Violet. So I put out Paranone Orange here, just a little bit of it. This is a high performance mixing color that I don't really like it all by itself, but I love it whenever I'm painting it in conjunction with the cool color of Quinacridone and the warm color of Burnt Sienna. It just does amazing things. I have a nice warm green that will allow me to tone my colors. This will be our main toning color, along with Cerulean Blue. Now normally when I'm doing a portrait and stuff, I use a lot of Cerulean Blue. I don't put out the Phthalo Blue that you see here, but we have a lot of real super dark, cool violet areas that we have to get, and Cerulean Blue just can't, even if you had some assist of all 3 primers, it can't really get you down to that particular tone, that real violet. So a little Phthalo Blue with the red violet toned up with just a bit of the green is a magnificent way to do that. Now I may end up, one thing I did kind of forget about here is we have these grays out here. I'll try to make it with because the Paranone Orange can do it as well. But I do use, when I make a lot of different grays, I do love Naphthol Red Light and the Phthalo Blue. So we might need to have some out there. I'll grab it just in case here, and we'll put that out just in case, okay? So, you ready? It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to try to keep moving on this whole thing. We're just going to try to keep going. And I'm going to work, whereas I did in the other portrait back there, worked at the whole solid dark background. The Premier Coup is a little bit more of a formal style for the portrait, even though it can be very relaxed and artistic. The Alla Prima, I like to do real brush work and brush calligraphy on the outside, and a lot of you wanted to see me do some of that stuff, so we're going to do that. We're going to go in and lay in our colors. Now, all kinds of ways that artists start out with the Premier Coup, but we're going to keep moving. With the Alla Prima. With Premier Coup, I come in, establish the darks, and then work lighter. With Alla Prima, I like to go with establish some of the darks, jump up to the lights, but I don't go all the way up to the lightest tone. I never put on the lightest tone ever. Usually, so if I'm perceiving something that has a 9, I'll drop 2 values down and put on a 7. That gives you more control over the overall look. And basically what you do is you put on a range and you paint through to the middle. In Premier Coup, you put on the dark and then you slowly go lighter. Does that make sense? Okay, so, and I do love the Alla Prima. I love some of the formality of the Premier Coup. I love tones, but I do like Alla Prima also. All right, so first off, let's go in and let's establish. We're going to have some darker tones, and they're going to be cooler tones. We'll establish some of those. And I don't always go, we do definitely have, the nose, the lower lip, the eye sockets as the real dark areas. But I'm going to work on his coat here first and establish that. I'm going to take burnt sienna. We got to go over here, burnt sienna, so we got to go darker. And quinacridone is about the same value as that, and we want to cool, because this is on the cool side here. And I want to go darker, so I'm going to go with the red violet. These are my two real cool colors that I'll work in here. Some of the lighter tone, some of the darker tone. And then this is going to be a little bit intense for that area, so that's where you have the green. So it's going to be a balance here. You can see the green will darken a little bit more, and it'll gray this tone quite a bit down and get us a lot closer to what that tone is going to appear over there. Now, sometimes I like variation in the tone, and so for the dog, that variation, I like it to come with some of my yellows. And if I want this nice, if I want to stay toned back over there, I'm going to get this variation with my yellow oxide. So you can see those colors right in there. Do you see that? Now all we got to do is apply it. So I'm going to start out, this is my very old 3/4 inch brush. Step way back on your hand, on the handle here, so you can keep very, very loose with it here with your brushwork. You want your brushwork and your calligraphy to stay very, very loose here. So I'm going to try to get rid of some of the holidays, which is the holes into the canvas, but I'm not going to try to get rid of all of it. I'm not going to work that hard on this particular layer. Now, usually with Alla Prima, when you're coming in here with Alla Prima, let me just get this out of the way, and you can see. So I have cameras there, I have cameras there, I have cameras there, and I have monitors all the way around here. So if you see me looking around at other things, that's what I'm doing. I'm checking it at different, so if I look at that monitor there, I'm looking at it like what you're seeing it at, which is about 8 feet, right? When you're looking at me on this camera, you're looking at it, and that camera's about 8 feet away over there on this side of the studio. And then we have one that is slightly closer, which is right over there, which is what you're seeing right up here. That's shooting the close-up here. And what I like to do is see it at 8 feet. So everything that hangs here in the galleries and stuff that we have, our viewings are 6 to 8 feet at a minimum. That's what I paint for. So we want to, establish that. With Alla Prima, usually what you do with Alla Prima is you establish the tone once. You try to establish and finish the tone once in movement, and you don't really rework it. Now, there's all kinds of artists today that say rework it, and I'm one of them. I'm one of them because I'm a tone painter. And but it's a lot of fun to take a painting and just say, okay, I got one shot at each area. I'm going to make that tone, put it on, and move, and then get that painting done as quickly and efficiently as possible. That's some of the tenets. So, but everything is changing, and I'm not, I'm a big advocate for change, so I'm not going to argue with that. I'm going to lighten this up just a bit, and you can see that with some yellow oxide. You can see I'm going to head right over to this side here. I might have to lighten it up just a bit more, but that will, and I will here. And I just don't want to get it, I want to get it lighter, and it's going to go a little warmer. I could add a touch of white. When you add white to it, not only do you cloud the color, but you opaque it as well. So that's something to always remember. But you got to remember too, acrylics dry a little darker. It's a little give and take. So it all depends on what you're painting with and stuff. But that's gonna dry down to a better tone in that area there. And we'll work just the bottom part of his ear and establish that plane there like that. And so we'll set that in there. Now you look at the relationship of this tone to that area, and then let's go grab some of the tones right in here on the lower side and down through to his neck here. So you can see this tone here, this tone is real close to what's going on in there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that, and let's come right at that point of his neck, and let's just put a tone. And see, I love using my old brush like this that doesn't give me a perfect stroke. And I don't want a perfect stroke. And if you're painting the original tentative alla prima, you could put texture in all of this because you're not supposed to go back. But you know, that's up to you. I'm gonna lighten. Let's go over and let's keep this cool. So see, as I'm going up with more of this yellow oxide, and I want to keep it cool with this nice quinacridone here. This color right in here, and I'll see that. And I might have to put just a bit of that orange in there, but you can see we're getting that cooler tone right in there. That's what we're looking for. And let's just establish a little bit of that in this area here. You know, this is the one thing painting this way has really helped me. You know, finding and seeing tones. I find and see tones so much better. You know, I used to always work my colors so wet. Let's go back a little darker. Used to work my colors so wet, and I relied a lot on blending. But now, as I'm a pure acrylic painter working tones, I like to make the tone itself, and you know, I don't work the blender, and it's helped my eye find tones faster. I'm going to go back to a little bit darker here and a little bit more grayed, and we might even add just a touch. A key word there is touch of the blue, because it is very powerful in this mix. And we'll outline a little bit of that. See how much darker that goes when you get that blue in there like that. We'll push that little bit, and my mark is a little big. Some of you that are watching me for the first time will realize I always like to overpaint something and then set it back into position. That is a violation of the original alla prima tenet. So, but this is my painting. And this is what we do. You know, the thing is, here's my philosophy on it. First, you got to have fun. Everything we do is fun. And this is a beautiful day outside today. This is a wonderful time to paint. I have the windows open. It's a wonderful time to paint. Everything's going great. And you gotta have some fun, and you've got to be able to instill creativity in everything you like to do, right? And if we run too many, I'm a guy that likes to follow rules, but if we run too many rules, impedes or stops your creativity, and you don't want to do that. So I'm gonna lighten this up just a bit. I've got this tone. See, I've got this tone right here. So it's going to be right between the two. In other words, of what we call a half tone between what we applied here and what we applied here is going to be this particular area, and that's still just a little dark, a little red. So I'm going to go a little more yellow, maybe a touch of white here. And remember, with the original tint of alla prima, you try to find that tone pretty quickly. See, that's a much better color, picking up that one right over there. The retrievers are kind of fun to paint here. We'll grab some of that. So I kind of like to block it in here, and I'll work light and dark and kind of block it in, and then I'll go back and forth. Now see, this is already starting to dry up here because it's a hot day. It's 87 degrees outside, and I have the windows open, of all things. But I have a little fan going there. I'm fine. And so if I want this to move again, because it's getting really stiff, I just add a little water to it. And that'll move, that tone will move for me here. And I'll be able to just set that area in as I kind of see there, like that. Okay. So anytime that I want to soften between two tones, even if I wanted to soften this area with that dark, you know, for the couple of hours of the painting that we're going to do here, I just put a little water into it, and I can soften that because the heritage stays wet. I mean, will stay where you can reconstitute it there for a little while, like that. So we'll just work that there for a second. And let's get a little bit more of that darker right in here by the edge of his ear. I like some of that in that brushwork there in his ear, and I just might leave that out there because that's this good calligraphy there. So we got that. Now let's just take both of these kind of together here, and I'll gray down a little bit more and cool just a bit more. And let's just knock out some nice brush work here. Some nice brush calligraphy for his lower section here. We'll just let that. Now that takes a lot of confidence to do that, and that took me, that took me so long to be able to do that. And part of it was because I was such a blender for so many years, and then I could never get the, that real casual look to my flowers, to anything that I painted. And I was able to do that as I became more of a tone painter. So I was able to really kind of get everything a little more casual. Let's put a few marks of this tone back over there, because there are some areas we'll pick that up. And we'll have to reset this tone again in just a little bit. But let's just grab some, let's warm this up. See, this is what I love about Alla Prima. I want to go work this area over here. I'm going to go work it. I work what it is I want to do. I'm taking some yellow oxide, some white right into here. And see, I'm heading right into that mid-tone. Not the lightest tone, but that kind of outside, that kind of middle tone right there. It gets more yellow, orange right up here, but right down in there. And I'm looking at that area right there that I just might just drop this on real quick and kind of capture some of that, some of the calligraphy here out. We'll just capture a bit of that out there like that real quick. And kind of set. Now we've got to put the warm tones. As a matter of fact, we can just go ahead and do that. We're Alla Prima, so let's just take a little yellow and a little bit of burnt sienna. We'll make this other tone that's right up in there. We'll have to have a couple of the tones. I'm going to add just a touch of water here. And see, that's real close to what that is over there. And so I'll move that. So a lot of times in Alla Prima, what I do is, I change the tone on my palette, watching my palette changing the tone. In Premier Coup, I'm very more scientific, let's put it that way, about the actual painting. And this is quite a bit more relaxed here to it, and I like it. I love both. I'm a chemist colorist. I love mixing the colors on the palette and looking at them. Let's just pull out a bit. Let some of these tones just kind of cross into each other there. And I probably could go up just a bit here. Sorry about that. And and I'm going to take some white with some of this tone, and we're just going to scrub out here like this down to the edge and let some of that. That's the good old Alla Prima edge there that I like, and I'll be able to manipulate it quite a bit more when we put in what we might want to do on the background. Let's take some of that light tone. That's right there. And let's just, for right now, I love this movement on him. So I read, what you do is you read the movement of their fur, and that's what you're trying to catch, is that movement here. And you try to do it efficiently. And, we may end up restating this. If you don't paint it quite a bit, you may end up restating it a lot. Alla Prima, you may end up restating it a lot, but that's part of the process. That's part of the learning that we do. So I'm going to catch some of that. I'm going to catch some of that going right up into there. And sometimes I use my finger to push a little bit, just a little bit of that mark. We're going to try to capture that a little better later. But this just tells me I've got to get in there, capture a little bit of that light here. It's kind of nice to see some of these tones. Let's, and I don't want it, I'm not taking my light up to the final. So this is a nice good look at it for us. But, before I take anything up to the final and to the lights and we start making all the fur and all that kind of stuff, we really need to get some of our background and stuff going through. All right, let's jump up to the warm. Let's go up there and let's get that a little brighter. So some Diarylide in it this time. Maybe a little yellow oxide and Diarylide. And you'll see that takes us right. Let me put a little bit better onto the that takes us right up over there to that nice, really warm tone. Now, it'll dry down just a bit, so let's add just a touch of nice light to it here. And let's just jump right in and grab some of that right in there. That's pretty darn good for that tone over there. And maybe a bit of that right out here. There. So, and that'll dry down just a touch, so that'll be good. Let's add just a touch more burnt sienna to it and come right down in here. Right in there. That's pretty good. Of course, I'll switch over to a smaller brush and be able to do quite a bit more calligraphy here in just a little while. Let's gray this, darken gray this just a bit grayer, just a tip right out there. And that's a little bit big there, Dave. And let's get a little lighter right in between these two, a little more gray. Here, just a little lighter and grayer. Capture that ear just a bit there. Right in there. Okay. And let's just do, what I do is, you know, and what a lot of artists tell you to do is look at the big and then focus down to the small. That's one reason why I'm painting with the 3/4 right now. I'm not, you know, there's a bunch of real small little tones in there, and I'm not applying those right now. You could, if you're a pure alla prima painter, yeah, you could, but I like to kind of play through that a bit, but you could add a few little ones in there like that where you see a bit of those, you know, coming in, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I have this nice tone here. I'm just going to slide over here and cool it. Let's try this. Just cool it. It's a little cooler than what he is right there, but I think that it'll work as a nice undertone that we can turn around and manipulate a little later here. So let's pull that down here on the side of his face and pull some of that. Follow the calligraphy. He's got beautiful long fur, so you can see what the brush calligraphy, what the actual brush mark needs to be on that. So you can do that. Now, so that's a brighter tone right in there. This one right here is just a little bit darker and just a little bit grayer here. We'll take some of that and then we'll add it right into that one right there to darken and gray just a bit. And let's start, it's going to start right here, really make the plane on the side of his face there. And I may have pulled that down a little too far, but that works. It'll work. And let's just take, I'm a big advocate of moving tone, so some of that, let's just move down through there. That works. And maybe a bit of it catching up through there. Catch some of that other kind of movement in him there. And let's just drop some of that in for that edge there a bit. And that one is a little bit more yellow, a little bit warmer, but this will be okay for right now. I'll address that again. If I was a pure tenet of alla prima follower, I wouldn't. I'd address it now, but I like to approach it this way. So, and now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making the painting a little easier for myself as I narrow down my eye. As I'm going to go in there and work his eyes and do all that kind of stuff, I'm going to narrow down where I'm looking. Instead of looking at the overall, I'm going to start looking down now at some fine, smaller ones. So I'm going to go from my 3/4 inch brush down to 8. You can go to an 8 or a 10 Fusion filbert like this. This is an old one, doesn't even have a chisel anymore. That's why I like it. And we're going to find some of the nice gray, cool tones here, and on his nose. So burnt sienna, green is the graying color, and a little red violet. Now we could add the tiniest touch of blue up here if we need. That cerulean is one of the best to do it if you're not super dark, because the cerulean is not as powerful. And look at the beautiful gray tones. See that underlying tone there by his nose up here in the front? It's a nice tone, and that might be just a touch dark, so we could add a bit of yellow and a bit more burnt sienna to it. And yeah, that's it right there. It's an underlying tone under some of his fur. And then I'll just bring that back into that one again. And right up by the top. And we'll just whisper a bit of that coming up and across a little bit right through there into his nose. Some of that's going to be all painted out, but you see all that little whisper of it in there? Let's just get it in there. And look at that nice warm little hit of it right there. Yeah, that's going to be kind of some of the fun stuff that we'll do. Now, look at where else that tone is. There's a little bit of it right up there. And right up by that mark. Let's push in, and some of that will paint out. Let's whisper just a bit of that. Now, that's dry on dry, really dry. I love granulation, but maybe not quite like that. So I'll just add water to this. And sometimes I'll just rinse my brush and just run water over it a couple of times to work those two tones together like that, a little softer, so I can, concentrate on the movement of the brush a little better. So just take water into your brush and just move it off. So if I wanted to soften the edge of this, which is not really a great thing to do, to leave an edge of a tone like that, and this is already dry, see? I just take a little water and run the edge like this and loosen that edge up a bit. That's a better way to leave the edge on a painting like that, so that it doesn't. But you see, this is going to happen for a couple hours. You can work the edges like that. So then this is a nice thing to be able to do, that you can come back and work the edge a little bit. Put on everything and then go back and work your edges a bit. Let's grab this side of the face. Let's differentiate the ear from this side of the face. We want a light, warm, kind of an orange. We might even add the tiniest bit of our Paranone this time into there. Look at how that just warms that tone. Let's get our yellows, their diarylides and the light. And we'll grab this lighter. Now it is up there. It is up there, probably an 8 to a 9 almost, probably a good solid 8. So, we're right about there, right about into that area there. And so let's just grab this and pull back just a bit here. And we'll pull that tone back down. We're going to let those, probably, I'll show you. This is the light tone, that's the dark tone there. And so I'll soften it. How do you bring those tones together? Well, very easily. First, first you can do it with water. You could take some water like this and run the edge. And that just takes those two and pushes them right together like that. That's one way. The other way, and as an artist, I do both because I like variation even in my painting here. I'll run a halftone. So I'll take, here was my dark, here is my light. I'll come somewhere between the two of them with a halftone, and I'll run that halftone in there like that. Sometimes touch it in the direction of his fur, and that softens those tones together and gives me the opportunity to come up here and restate maybe that light pulling down, and now I have a softer transition through the painting here, following some of his calligraphy. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it here, and I'm going to try to show you a few of them in this painting, but I can't show you all of them, but I'll show a few of them. Let's go grab this tone, slightly darker. Let's go up. We want to make sure we really capture the sockets of the eyes. Into the retrievers like this, they have these amazing eyes. And all basically in a lot of your portraiture, that's what you want to try to capture, is those eyes. So we're putting that part of the socket in here, there. And I might take just a bit of water and just pull down here and extend that just a bit there, some of that movement. Now that'll soften out. We can soften that out with a halftone, but I'll put some of that in. Matter of fact, let's go in there a little lighter. Take this a little lighter, up to about a value 9 this time. Let's not to the final light. look to undertone here, not to that final light. You look, you know, we want a tone that's right in there. I don't want that super light one. I want one right below it just a bit. That's where I want to grab this. And I want to see it right up there like that and pull in right up towards the corner of that eye there. And I need to finish off a slightly darker down over here to round his head just a bit there. And I need that shadow tone. I didn't finish off his ear there. How come you guys didn't tell me that? I need to finish off his ear here. A little darker, burnt sienna, a little yellow, just a touch of green because it's a receding plane back there. Touch of green will help it gray and recede just a bit. Let's just grab that. That's going to be just a touch dark. So we'll go a touch lighter here. Right in there like that. That's good. That'll allow me to build that side of his face back up again. As a matter of fact, so you don't lose, you know, I always follow Sargent, even if I'm not using his exact painting technique this time. Always preserve your drawing because you don't want it to come off. And so when you know you just violated a line, you want to go back and make sure you preserve your drawing so that you know, you don't take, because after a while you'll forget about that and you'll come off. So we want to preserve our drawing here of this. And here towards the end of the video and stuff, we'll show you a little bit more about, you know, drawing. I'm a big advocate of drawing, learning to draw, but you can do portraits and stuff like this without having the ability to draw, and I'll show you some of the ways to do that. But we'll put a bit more of this light right back up here on this edge. I want to get this plane a little bit more rounded right there and pull in. That'll be better. That'll capture some of that around his eye, around the side of his head and round that up. So that'll be good. Let's get some of this nice medium tone in here. So that's going to be burnt sienna, yellow. It's starting to cool, so a little bit of our quinacridone, because we're in the middle tones. In the middle tones, I grab the quinacridone. We'll lighten, and then we need to gray slightly. We need to gray slightly. Let's see where we are on that. So don't look at the light here. Look at what's underneath there. It could be just a touch more mottled with some yellow, maybe a bit of green and some light here. Here, I hit that violet there. That's kind of a pretty tone right in there. See that? That right in there. And let's grab some of that right down in here. And just kind of sketchy. This is sometimes when I'm putting this on, I like to use more of the chisel of the brush and slide it just a bit because you'll start to get some of the fur look to the dog. And come back over here. So I've got a cool side and a warm side on my palette. And I want to get more yellow. We'll grab both of our brighter yellows. We'll cool that just a bit here. And we're going for that tone on that part of his head. Let's try that. So it's that tone right in there. And see where that goes. Try to, we'll need a little bit more gray and stuff onto the back side there. Let's just cool and gray that just a touch more. Boy, that was too much there, Dave. Get a little burnt sienna in that. And pull some of that down through there. And I like that alla prima edge. I like to take that color out without destroying the drawing too much. I like to take that color out there. And so towards the end of the video here at the end, I'll show you basically how you can do the drawing and stuff really quickly, really easy. On my online courses, I show it all the time, but we'll do that. So now so I got that area in and everything. I want to get into here, which means I got to go light, but I don't want to put it in as light as it is there because I don't want to see that much light into the painting yet. I always want to leave myself some room to grow, get it. But I do want to make sure it's lighter than my other tones that I'm applying here. And let's just come down and push a little bit of that. That could be a bit warmer yellow. Bit warmer yellow on him here. So those of you that are painting this will have some of the photos, reference photos and stuff that I use over on our websites and stuff, and all the links are up in the description. So you always go up and check the description of each of the videos. We always put the links of everything that I'm doing right up into the descriptions there. So we'll grab a bit of that, and that works. We need to restate that other tone here, right up in there, just a bit. Get that a little closer so you know. Looks like I know what I'm doing there. So we'll get that just a bit. As my eye focuses down, we start to put in some of these other little tones. It'll start to, the image will slowly become more and more and more like him. So that takes just a bit. I don't try to capture it right away. It takes just a bit to get there. So you can look like right back up in this area here. We need to take, matter of fact, we can take some of these together here. I'll put a little water here so it thins just a bit. And we can grab some of that nice warm tone. Just drag that over. That'll take this area just a little closer to what he is there. And this is how I like to paint. So with the pure tinted at all Prima, you don't go back into something like this. But you know, with the David Prima, or how I like to do it with acrylics, I go back. You know, I like to go back and set those things up. But everybody's a little different. You know, we all do different things. Now, let's get that left side of it, or his right side. We're seeing him on the left here. Let's gray that up just a bit. A little green right into our siennas here. Okay, and I'm gonna use several grays. This is a beautiful warm gray from like greens and siennas, and it's a tone that mostly will disappear here towards the end of the painting, but it's a beautiful warm tone, and I like it underneath. I'm going to go up to almost a 9 here, a little lighter, maybe even a little lighter yet, because this will dry down. And when you get up above value 8, you'll be surprised at how far down some of these things dry. So I'm up here about a 9, getting it very light. You'll be surprised at sometimes just how these tones dry down, how much they dry down. So we'll grab some of that light that's right there. Beautiful little undertone. Let's grab this side of his face and put just a bit of that there as well. Okay, now what does that do? Boy, that leaves us an area we better get some halftones in for sure. Let's just put a little bit of that right there to soften some of that area there. So you could do it with water, but we have this lovely little halftone that we could do as well right in there. Halftone is halfway between the two, so any kind of burnt sienna, yellow, a little bit of green, see, that's a beautiful tone right in there. We'll start to capture a little bit of that. And sometimes I'll blur the edge with my finger. Sometimes I'll take some, clean the brush, just not completely, just rinse it out a bit and just pull through with a bit of water like that. Grab that. It's not blending it, and because I wipe my brush each time, so I'm not carrying any color. I'm just blurring the edge. I call it blurring. I blur the edge. So I don't like to blend, I blur. Let's push that in. A little bit of that color in there. That's kind of nice. I like a bit of that coming right up here by his eye. So I'm going to push a bit of that in there. Right up there. And that will make a little bit nice tone right in there too. That what we just put as a half tone there. Just a touch of that working through some of that. But see, when you come through a second and a third time, you start to get more movement of the tones, and that's when it gets really nice. Let's put some of that tone right down in there a bit more. Right in there. And let's go over and grab that brighter little spot. Not too much brighter, but we'll grab some of that, a touch of orange some of your brighter yellows here. Let's just grab that right in there. That's just kind of a pretty little spot, and it's kind of nice to spot him up sometimes with a few of those little fun tones here that will grab him just a bit. There, I like those. There's a nice, maybe just a half tone darker here, just a bit. That's a little too dark. Let's go back up towards that. Put that little spot right in there. Now we'll go more burnt sienna, maybe just a touch of that violet. As you come over here onto the cool side, find that violet. Push that violet in there. Okay, find that violet, and let's gray that just a bit, because we're really heading into the grays here. Maybe a touch lighter. So I like to work multiple tones like this into these areas and let them override. That's where I think you get a lot more interest into the dog itself here. Let's take some of this light. You see just a bit of that coming right out through here. Just kind of dabbing around here, following kind of some of the calligraphy you see of the fur here. Where it's going to go. This is why I love the old brushes. Pushing it in with the old brushes. And this is pure fun. This is just a lot. You know, you've got to, don't ever think, oh, my painting, I'm destroyed my painting, or this is horrible. It's just paint and a board, and have some fun with it. And if you have some fun and stay lighthearted and go, well, that's the wrong tone, but I'll fix it. And you can. And here's the thing that a lot of, as a matter of fact, I was watching this other video of this other artist, and he said, and matter of fact, I shared it on my Facebook page, and I shared it over in my classrooms. I said, you guys got to go watch this guy, because he's very correct. And then he says, once you get everything blocked in and all these colors around, then you're able to see some of these tones, other tones, a lot better. And that's true, because you block it all in, and then you can start fussing it and finiting it just a little bit more. And if you're new to tone painting like that, doing a couple dozen paintings like that is going to start training your eye to be more discerning on a tone, and you're going to have an easier time with it and finding it, and a better and a faster time at finding the tones. So, it's a process with what I want to say, but as you fill in, as I'm filling in here, then my eye is going to see all these areas that are close, and I just need to refine them just a bit more, and I will. I can do that, because that's my job. I can refine that tone. I am dropping this down. It needs to be a little cooler. I want just a little darker, a little cooler right in here for that side right there. It's this jawline right there. And as his head is turned, and I want to push that tone right in there. Now, see, I'll fur him all up. I'll do all these amazing fur strokes later, not now. Once I get my tonal map in, then I can come through. I know the tones. Then I can come through and I can put more into him. Let's get back to that light. That light is really close. If I add just some of that coolness right there to that, and that light over here is pretty darn close, especially into as a base for this. There, right in there like that. Pretty close to where I want to go. It's not the lightest, but it's pretty close. Let's just grab some burnt sienna and some violet. We'll take that right up here, slightly darker, maybe a bit of yellow in there, but it's cooler, see? Still leave it cooler. Let's put a little halftone in there right now, just to soften that exchange. For those of you that like to blend and stuff a little bit, we can do that. And let's grab that darker tone. I forgot to put that one in. Or actually, I was saving it for this part of the painting. Here, let's put a little darker. Yeah, grab that. Burnt sienna, red violet, and green. Because now we're heading into a darker area, right? Let's grab that. It's coming off the corner of his eye and down. And it's going to lift this part of his ear up here as well. It's going to come all the way up there. and lift that part of his ear like that. And let's pull that tone right there. We'll drop down by the socket of his eye and put some of that right there. Now I might want to take some of this, either cooler, slightly lighter, and just run them. Don't blend them, just run a couple strokes through each other, just across each other. Don't blend. And because then it just makes one tone. But that is what I call is just running them together. I actually use a term in my classrooms called incorporating them. I incorporate the terms. I visually incorporate them. I always liken it to marbleizing, like the marble of a tabletop or something. So you kind of marbleize them together, but you don't get rid of the individual tones. They just kind of swirl together just a little bit, and that creates the fur, and it also creates the tones crossing. It creates a little bit of visual, what we call optical blending. I'm going to put just a touch of light in there that comes down just a bit more and cross. And it's very important, you know, that your drawing or your photo, your reference photo, since we're not working from a live dog here, that they are, you know, the same height. So you can just really look right across easily here and see there'll be about halfway up this curves, about halfway up that mark will come in here. See, my eye starts to get a little bit smaller now, just a little bit. Let's just push that little tone right in there and get that a little closer to the side of his face there, just a bit more. So I start to see, after I get a majority of him blocked in, which he is, I start to see a bit more tones. Now, as we swing around this way, we got a lighter, little warmer one right up there, a little bit more yellows into that. Let's get a little yellows, a little light here, just slightly cool. We'll drop that in, right in there. Okay, and let's just, now you can take just a little bit of your burnt sienna over here with some of your greens and just put a little half tone, just boom, see? Real quick, see how that blurs the edges of those other two tones. And just that one little mark that I put in there starts to take you to what that is. As you start to, you know, fuss down and get smaller, like I could take a burnt sienna right here with just a touch of that orange and a touch of this yellow and find that other little tone right in there and fuss one right together there too and get that even closer to that area, see? So that's what's so fun. That's when I really like it. Like, I'll take some of that slightly more to the yellow side here. Let me just fuss this tone just a bit. Right out there. There like that, see? And that gets that even a little closer. And some of that can just go right up here too. Just a bit. Just some small marks of it. And let's go back and increase the light just a bit right here. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I usually don't do this until I have more of him laid in. But that'll get us there. That'll get a little bit better. Here, let's get his nose, and then we want to go work on, before we get too far, we want to work on his eyes and stuff here so that he starts to look at us. Let's get that nice violet, lower lip, violet, some green, some burnt sienna. This is nice gray, dark, slightly more blue. Slightly more blue and cooler. I'm going to use the corner of the brush. I'm just going to set that in. It kind of comes up, right up there towards his mouth line there. So I'm going to drop that just a bit lower and let it run into that upper lip there. You can get really finite now if you want. You know, I usually do some of this later, quite a bit later, but there's a little light spot. There's the catch light that's hitting right there. And so we can just drop a bit of that light in there right now just to say we did it. We haven't put the catch in it, so we could probably just do that just a bit more so we know that. But that's a little, I usually don't do that this soon in the painting, but let's take some of this lighter gray. See, it's a real violety gray, and that's a tone that I'm seeing right in there. Let's drop that down right in here. And I like to scumble this. Scumbling is letting the color stay dry. And it's really, sometimes it's hard to apply, but that's what you want. Let it stay dry so it doesn't make a perfect stroke, downstroke. Let's push some of that right in there. Right in there like that. Okay, so we'll grab some of that. Let's make that a bit lighter, maybe even a bit warmer over into this one. This will be a half tone. Right in between those right there, and soften that edge right there just a touch. Right on the edge of that lip is actually a bit lighter right on the edge there, the bottom side. Boom, there. Let's pull down right here. Pull down and out like that. I like just a bit of that movement there. Here. And yeah, that works. Now, let's just, you could take extender or water. I use extender sometimes just to make the color move. I don't use it to blend. I'm not a blender. It's going to slow down the drying time, and that's okay because I'm going to be leaving this area here in a minute. I'm going to take some of my warm tones that I had up there, some of my gray tones, and that's going to help me right in here with the side. It could be a little bit more gray. Right in there. Probably just a bit more. Right in there. That's better. And just kind of scumble stroke that off a bit. That's the whole side. Let's model that right up here with some of these and the grays and this. Modeling on your brush means multiple colors going on without blending them on your palette too much. So they're going to come off in different strokes. And usually like around their muzzle and stuff like that, I'm starting to put in a lot of tones. And so I like to do that. Now, ever so much of a hint of the upper lip, the lower part of the upper lip here. So I'm going to push that on, which will help us define that. But we've got to immediately take some of our lights, our nice mottled lights here, and pull down through to that, eliminating most of it, leaving just a little bit to preserve our drawing. There, we can see. Okay. And, you get those tones on. This is the whole thing. You get those tones on, and you can see right away that, that I could really state a nice light, a much lighter tone. See, this is all dry here, right? Pretty much, not completely, but I'll just add some water right to it here and liven up that tone. And with the holoprima that I do here, I like to, build the tones, get the tones correct. Then I'm going to come back with thick paint and make the actual fur strokes later on here. But I'll pull those down. We'll just grab some more of that movement there. See, doing these movement strokes multiple times really gets you close and really gives a nice look to your dog, to your animal that you're painting here. That's how I like to approach it. So when you look at that tone, I'm right up in there. I'm not there. I'm not that light. I'm right up in there, see? And this will dry down a bit, so maybe not quite that far, but I'm getting closer there. There, like that. And if you want, you can just, you don't have to make the same. Matter of fact, it's prettiest if you don't make the exact same tone that you had before. Work another one close and just work those, incorporate those together like that. And you're grabbing that area just a little bit more, a little bit closer here. And let's just pull down just a bit, a little lighter. And we'll grab that. There we go. So we're getting it just a little closer. That nice light tone here can pull right down there by the lower lip. Pull down a bit. And just grab that touch there. We'll put the fur in and get it. I'm looking for getting his tones in right now. And we have to get all lighter right down here, but we're getting in a pretty good shape. Now as this dries down, you can see he can come lighter all the way around. Some of this nice light warmth can come back up and through here again. And this is the way I like to do it. I mean, I love to work this. And pure holoprima, you wouldn't. You try to get closer with the tones. Well, I'm one that you know, you have this in color theory, and, you know, if you haven't studied color theory, you should. There's a rule in there called simultaneous contrast. And it's just like what that other artist said, is you get all these tones on, they're going to affect everything else in your painting. And so, you know, you're going to come off, and that's okay. You're going to come off with the tone, you're going to get in there and go, oh, wow, that dried a lot darker than I thought. And, you know, and the second that I push in some of these other colors here, that's really going to change a lot of him here. So, you know, I mean, we have to make some of those adjustments. You know you're going to make those adjustments. We're going to have to make some of those adjustments. And so alla prima is really fun. There, with some of the people that say, well, you don't make adjustments. Well, this is your alla prima. We make adjustments to the tones. So I'm just going to just lighten that just a bit there. I do like having a bit of that other. So see, my eye starts working smaller into smaller movements of the tone. And I'm going to want to start painting with some textures, not yet, but pretty soon, to pull some of these strokes down and start to get some more of the movement of his fur and stuff. After I get these, you know, these looks to the that I want. That's a bit too much movement up there. I've got to get his eyes in. I've delayed that. I'm not usually this late in getting eyes in, but I want to put a bit more of this warmth right up here, because the eyes are going to make everything change quite a bit. So I want to get just a bit more of that. Let's push in just a bit of that right in there. And I like leaving some of those marks. You know, I mean, we might leave a bit more. It all depends, you know, and it's like I said with the other retriever, okay? The other retriever here and what your calligraphy, just like the difference between Frans Hals and Rembrandt, who were both contemporary painters at the time, and you know, they approached it completely different in how they did it, and you know, their clients, their customers and stuff, you know, each had their own likes and dislikes about it and everything. You will find your own. Your calligraphy and how you leave your lights and your darks and you know, how you play your brush on the surface and whether or not you use a palette knife, that's all part of what's going to become you as the artist. And of course, some of you are already there, but they, you know, that's just all part of your technique for you as the artist. This could be a good tone lighter before I go into the eyes and nose there, just to help me see that just a bit more there. That's a little cooler, too cool a gray, but that is just going to help him pop forward there just a bit. And look, see, that's the whole thing. When you paint tones like this, they dry down. And so this is why, especially if you're in acrylics, you do end up having to work them a couple times, because sometimes then the undertone of what you're painting dries down a lot more than you think. I've got this little bit of dark I want to put in there into his nose. It's got to be a little lighter than his lower lip here. A bit of pouncing light through it, scumbled through. We'll break that up a bit, make that look kind of nice. That's good. Let's go ahead before we do the eyes and set that nose too. Phthalo, burnt sienna, some of this orange. The orange we're going to use instead of the Naphthol Red Light. And look at it, makes a beautiful gray. See these beautiful grays? That's the gray that's in him. And we can warm that over here, make this beautiful gray over here slightly warmer too as we go over to the warmer side. But let's just drop that in. That's a good mid-plane, receding plane gray right there. And a bit of that up here on the top of his nose. Let's get some more sienna in it. Slightly lighter, just a touch, and some sienna in it, because it's going to dry down too. And put that soft, that it helps his nose incorporate into his fur. You want to watch when you're painting the nose. You want to watch your tones really closely here, because, and you want to, you definitely want to at all times maybe blur the edge a bit, but incorporate some of the tones that you use in the body, which of course is the burnt sienna here. Because if you don't, you're going to make the nose look like it's stuck on, like it's just glued on there. So you want to make sure you're incorporating tones. I'm going to take a little bit of those two colors, put them together into the light here, and just scumble on that side. Pull out just a bit there, like that. It helps that plane, that side of the nose. Let's get this slightly warmer. So back up to this side, slightly lighter. Not that blue, Dave. My brush hit that blue, darn it. And get a little bit of that more. There, that's a good, watch that blue in their brush. Boy, I tell you, that phthalo is so powerful. But this tone right here will look for the light side of his nose, the light warm side of his nose. And that could be a bit lighter, just a touch. And you don't want to go too light because you need that undertone to keep it from getting chalky looking. And let's come right down to there. Now, that's a good light strike of it, but I need a additional soft. So there's where I am. I need a little bit darker. So let's just go a half tone, which the half tone would be a tone right between this one and that one right there. And we'll push that in right on that edge to soften. See, I just take 2 strokes and I soften that nose, you see? And that's what I want to do here. We'll just drop that in. Just the corner of your brush, a little bink like that, and it starts to take that little edge away, see? So I don't blend. I just take, I want some of the power of that stroke, that movement there. Let's take this lighter bit. Let's push to the lower part of his nostril there. There's a hit right here on the upper part of his nostril there. See that little hit right there? Little light struck plane right there. So let's just go ahead and bring that out. And then let's go back to our darker tone. Now, if this starts to dry up and it's getting really sticky here, it's very hot here today. I opened up the windows, and maybe not such a great thing right now. Let's darken it down, cool it down just a bit, get that lower nose, lower part of his nose. We've got to get that nice dark nostril in there. Sometimes, you know, when I'm painting the noses and stuff, I'll simplify the structures a little bit so that you don't want to go in there and render all the structures perfect on the nose, and that softens them just a bit and makes them more friendly. There's a nice dark tone right there. You might want to just blur that edge right there like that, so that stays a little bit softer. His edge is pretty defined, but we can stay a little softer here, and that makes him a little more friendly in the end. Here, let's put just a touch of that pulling up. Okay, nice. I'm just going to use I'm going to paint the nostril here with some of this dark, and I'm just going to use the corner of the brush. And you know, in actuality, they're perfectly formed little nostrils and stuff, and I don't like to do that. You know, they're like little comma strokes, what we call comma strokes, and I don't like to do that as much. I like to keep them not quite as perfect as what you see in the dog, and that makes it a little better. I'm just going to warm up just a touch. We'll work this nose again a couple more times here. Here we go, just like that. Work that. There. So you see those nice warmer tones. It could get a little bit lighter. I'm going to add just a touch of extender right in here to keep this wet for a few minutes. You can see how. Now, if it dries, extender won't reconstitute the paint. See all this is dry over here? This is dry. And I can put extender on it here, and it won't bring up the paint, because the paint is dry. Extender only slows down the drying time when the paint is wet. When it's dry like that, you need water, the solvent, to bring up the paint. See how the solvent brings up the paint here? And with a little extender in it, will let this, and I'm slowly bringing the paint up here with the solvent. And a little bit of the extender will help it stay wet, but as it's drying there, you need the solvent into your paint here to bring it up. See how the solvent is dissolving it here? So there's a difference. So as the artist, when you're painting like this, you can put extender down. That will do nothing. But the extender now is mixed up in here, and that'll stay wet for longer. But if it's really sticky here, the extender won't help that too much. You need a little bit of water, and you can see the water immediately loosens up the whole paint, because water is like paint thinner or mineral spirits to a oil painter. So that's what we use that for. So there's a bit of the nice dark. Let's go slightly warmer. I want to keep this a little warmer right here as this comes up the side of his nose, just a bit here. And I want to keep those marks kind of loose right there like that. And then we'll drag. I'll get a little small in my vision here, but a little soon still. But we'll just drag some of that burnt sienna and yellow and stuff like that right in there and pull that right across. Get that other little bit of a tone there, a little closer to what it is on him there. But you can see as I start to get these tones in, he's starting to come into life. Let's go out and get the eyes in here. And I like to use a stick, you know, in the old days. I mean, well, it's not the old days, but we call it that. It's called a maul stick. Something to rest my hand on here. I'm going to go to a smaller, this is a number 4. This is a synthetic filbert. The synthetic has a little more of a spring to it. It's going to allow me to have a little more control over the edge. And painting the eyes is all about the edge. I'm going to start out with kind of a mid-tone of blue and burnt sienna here into the eye, and so I'm not going to look at the deepest tone. I'm not going to look at the catch lights or the lightest tone. I'm going to look into the medium part of the eye area here. We'll put some up in there. We'll put some up in here. And you can sketch it around a little bit. In Premier Coup, we blur the edges just slightly to keep their eyes slightly blurred there. This is going to be a lot darker. We're going to carry some more blue into it, maybe a bit more violet into it, darker, cooler. But, you know, we're going to want to have some over here because we do want to see the eyes a bit more. Now, Sargent, he would just go in there and place the dark in and do that. And he's the master and he can do that. But I feel like I have to have a little warmth. And you can do whatever you want to do. I feel like I have to have a little warmth in that area as I work it. A little bit of water. I'm going to go a bit more sienna, burnt sienna, just slightly warmer here. And I'm just going to drag that right across here, blur out the lower edge, try to pull these strokes out so that his socket here isn't well defined. And we have the rounding top stroke here that is going to help put the upper lid and that socket in. Now, to help that quite a bit, we need that light stroke pulling down. So I'm going to take some, I'm just going to rinse my brush for a second, take some yellow, some of my burnt sienna, a little bit of my cool colors here to gray this just a bit, and maybe a bit lighter here, up around a value 7 or 8. And let's just take this for right now, just a stroke down, pull down and lift off. And you're going to pick up that dark, so I'm going to pick up some more here on the palette. Streak, pull down, and then I'm going to lift off, and that's going to put that softer edge of that light on that dark. We want to capture some of these areas really precise because this is going to give the wonderful look to him when we're done. So, and we're not quite there yet, but, you know, we'll get there. And, you know, normally, you know, you'd look at a painting like this about 2 hours or so, maybe a little quicker, but about 2 hours or so. But I'm slowing down just a little bit as I'm explaining stuff to you and talking a lot. And I do like to do that. And because, you know, when I was learning and stuff, I hung on, and I'm still learning. Let me not say that way. I'm always learning. But I hang on and he's not looking too bad on that monitor. I hung on every word my instructor always said. And You know, so every time they took the moment to explain something, I loved it. So I'm going to step back on my brush here just a bit, and I'm just going to, you know, just brush out like this, just a bit of that light. We'll redefine and we'll put the hair and all that kind of stuff in, but just a couple values lighter. And let's grab that hair movement here this way, here like that. And if that gets too harsh in there, then put that halftone in as well to soften that out. Let's get that, and I'm going to go more with the, I don't see it quite in his eye, but I want to make his lower eye here a little warmer. So I'm going to put some burnt sienna right in with that gray and fix that right up in there so it's a little, even though his most of his eye is down in shadow, you can just barely see that, and that's what I want. I want to see that in there. Now I'm going to put a little burnt sienna orange here, just a bit warmer into some of this part of his eye. You know, you don't really see that in there, but I just love the warmth of that, especially on the light side of the face. So I want to see it. Now let's take that dark, let's get that violet. We have to play that against the violet. It always keeps some of that burnt sienna in there though too. That if you don't keep that burnt sienna in there, you'll get just like a ring around his eye. You want this eye here. We're going to do the inside. We have to put the shadow on later, but we'll do the inside ring here. It's actually kind of like the thickness of the upper part of the lid and stuff there. And work very small. And for your brush calligraphy, I find something that works with me is I get real light like this, and I kind of slowly encroach on it, and I just whisper the color, and I'll pull it in some directions that I see, and that starts to put on some of the detail that we want to have on that eye. I want a little more dark right up on the top ellipse part of it, right up here. And I want a little more sienna right here. We'll put those catch lights in here in a minute. The catch lights always kind of bring his eye into where it should be. Now, a little lighter, a little grayer. This is a beautiful gray tone that we made here from the blues and the burnt siennas and greens right here for the lower part of the lid, pulling up and in here. So there's just a nice little gray. That could be ever so half a tone lighter, just a value or so here. Let's go up one, and we'll pull in just a bit around. Soften that into the eye there just a bit. I like the blurry bits of color, you know, so it's not a perfect line. Let's take some of that sienna and yellow right out here. Sienna and yellow, a little bit more sienna here. A little bit of white, that might be too grayed. Some of my yellows. And pull around the upper lid here again. You know, that's a little dark. See how as I'm getting down now in my painting, here's where I was. I'm just going to step off the side. As I get down in my painting here now with the smaller brush, I get a little more fussy about my tones as I'm bringing them in a little closer to what it is I want him to look like. Now, we have to bring out that nice roundness to the top part of his eye. And it's like I explained in the other retriever, for those of you in my online class that's watching this particular one, on the other retriever, that eye opens up, right? And that's what gives them the wow factor here. So we want to open up that eye, the roundness of the eye. We don't want to eclipse that upper lid. See, that's eclipsing it there, and it makes him a little angry. If you made it really straight, he gets really angry. So we want to open up that roundness. Make sure you open up that roundness, because that gives the loving surprise to the eyes that we want to have. Let's get that dark to the lower part right down here again. Reset that. A little bit more dark. There. Right in there like that. Okay. And Let's put in the lower catch light just for now. We can redo these. Just a nice soft gray right on this side of the eye. A nice soft gray. And I usually put it in a bit bigger and tap it down with some color. Let's just drop that in. And then the main part of the catch light here, a little bit lighter gray. Still a gray. We don't want to go to a white. That'll make him look bug-eyed. So maybe like a 8 or a 9 gray here. And we just want to use the edge and just kind of tap that in. Don't make a perfect like line or circle or something like that. We don't want to have that there. We want to have a blurred line. Just a touch there. Like that. And let's put just slightly darker. There's just a hint of a catch light there. A couple little marks over here on this side, which I just joined together. Bigger than what it should be, so I take a little bit of dark and I take that out. That's how I love to paint, is I put too much on and take out. Take it down, take it out slightly. And it allows me to define the eyes and stuff a little better. So let's just work that right in there just a bit more. So as I'll get in here, I'll finite these tones, fix up and finite those tones just a bit more, and we'll get that. So that's getting him closer. He doesn't have the lights on and stuff, but that's getting him closer, and that gives us to a point now in the painting that we could put in some of our background. Now I love this kind of violety, softer violet look to that. There, I'm going to go back to my 3/4 inch. You realize I'm just using a couple of brushes. That's the other thing. You don't need a whole bunch of brushes. Let's get a lighter violet here. Blue and violet. I tell you, that blue is that phthalo. I should have used cerulean here. Cerulean's so much easier to control next to that. The violet. To tone the violet, which we want to do, this is really cool color. We could cool it, but we always want to go back to one of the base colors of our dog and add that in. That gives you a little bit of burnt sienna there. That gives you a little bit of softer color to work with. Now, I'm probably going to want to have that. Let's go down just a bit. Probably going to want to have that a little lighter, like it's in the photo. I do like that violet there. So let's just take a look. And I want to do calligraphy here. So I want to be very much, and I love the violet into this nice medium white, the warmth of the medium white that's in there. So we want to, and usually, you know, like when I put on, a lot of people always ask, you know, how do you do these strokes? And boy, that took me kind of a while to find my way of doing it that I really like. But I'm a big advocate of studying the old Dutch masters, and they always put in what is called St. Andrew's cross into their center. So if he's leaning out this way, your contrast strokes, and what is the idea of a contrast stroke? It's to bring out basically your subject here. And I'll bring these right together. See, this is what I like. I'll bring these right into here like that. You know, soften that. See, just you get that loose brush work out through there. I love that kind of stuff. And so we'll want some of that loose brush work and stuff there. But this is bring out your subject. And so you run a contrasting stroke to contrast your subject here. And he'll have a little bit of shadow on that side there. So we'll push that in on that side there. So, and by the time we get all the light colors, the lighter tones in, because remember, when we said we were going to do this, yeah, that looks pretty good. We're going 2 values down from where we want to be. Does that make sense? 2 values down from where we want to be. Let's take some of this light, change it up a little bit, maybe just a touch of green or so in it, a little green, a little burnt sienna, so it's not exactly the same tone here. And I just eclipse that ear a little too much. Sometimes I'll just pull it together there and blur those together, especially if it's on a back receding edge. That looks pretty good, you know. Let's pull some of this down here. So here like this. And remember, it's only paint. Don't get wild, but just let it go. Have some fun with it. Let's gray it down a bit more and get a little bit cooler, grayer, darker, just a bit. You let his tone and the tone of the contrasting stroke here kind of start to come together just a bit more. And so let's get a bit more sienna and blue into that. Love that cerulean. Got to remember to grab that. It's a better tone. And let's just grab some of that. Here, bring those together right there. Like that. You can use your paper towel and take off like that. That looks good. There's all kinds of fun ways you can bring those tones together. I like just that little bit of through light coming from the photographer here, right there. That looks good. Break that edge a bit. Here we go. And now, if you want to get some more softness to there, not a lot of prima do. You could head towards your yellows right up here. It's almost a half tone between your what you're doing, with the violets, the contrasting of the violets in your background there. And you can leave some of that, pull that out there a bit like that, and go whatever you want. You probably revisit these kinds of strokes. I usually revisit them a couple times as I'm working them. Working some of these here. There we go. So now, you step back and you say, yeah, okay, and I like that. And you can take even your dirty paper towel here and pull through, and you can leave some of this. You can pull through with some water, soften it a bit, get some different looks there, whatever you want here. I like the brushwork. I want to put some more of that light and maybe some warmth right in there. It's a little cool after we build some of the lights and stuff, okay? So we got to build some of the lights of it. But it's been an hour and a half, and I need a cup of coffee. So I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee, look at him for just a minute, and be back, and we'll start the next video of this when we're going to start some of the lights and start putting on some of the fur, okay? So we'll go do that, and I'll be right back. Hi everyone, welcome back. Now, I promised to tell you a little bit about your drawing. Now, what I always have my students do, especially if you're not real good in drawing, and that's something that you need to work on. And there's fantastic videos on YouTube and fantastic instructors that can teach you a lot about drawing. But you can still learn how to capture shapes and stuff, and that's what I do, is by using, this is a 3mm plastic, and I got it from Dick Blick. It's you get it in huge rolls, and it's not expensive, and you can lay that over the draw over your reference, and using a marker. Now this is an absolutely wonderful marker. I got it. We sell it on our online store, and it's Japanese, and I've taught over in Japan 49 times, and every time I go over there, I bring tons of these little markers. You get them at the dollar store there, and they're instantaneously permanent. It has a fine marker end on it, and it has a wider marker end on it, and I just love it. But you can draw on your this, take off some lines that you might think, and then lay it over your painting and see the difference. That's the whole thing. If you can see where the difference is, then you have a great, better job of capturing the image pretty close. So you can see right here with my dark, I'm pretty good. I've eclipsed the ear here with a bit of my background, which I did when I did that brush stroke. So I know I'll bring that back. This is an important line right here. I'm rounded right here on the muzzle a little bit more than what I need to be right here. So it helps you come in and see where some of the the problems might be I'm all real good right down all through pretty much everything, and through his eyes, through his nose, through everything. So just a couple of areas that I will make note of that I am off of. I have it, I could bring up the top of his head there just a bit, which I eclipsed, but this ear and that nose, those are the most important ones. And so what's nice about acrylics too is they dry. You can lay this over, redo your, redo it and make a, make a couple of mental notes of where you want to go. I want to pull from that ear right down to about that point in there, and set that. So I want to work on that here first, and then round up some of that. But it's really nice. You can just take off. You have the whole thing, and you can, go take some of those reference points off of your animal there, off of that, and see, and with the clear plastic and a marker like that, and see where it is. Now, drawing, and like I say, that's a great way to do it. Drawing is something that you need to do because that helps keep your painting in line. But as you're learning that, and as you're painting that, you can use tools like this to help you see certain areas. So I can see, quite clearly, I need to reset that on his muzzle here, and I'm just going to take some of my light that I had here and grab my stick. Let's get this a little lighter, and because now we're going to work in some of our strokes and start working on some of the calligraphy of him. So I want to make sure that I'm going to capture some of these areas correct to his body shape and perspective wise and everything. So, and that comes a little closer to his nose right up there. And so we'll eclipse that just a bit more than what I had. Put in some of that light. We'll grab some. If I'm pure alla prima, I might even just start leaving some of this brush strokes and stuff like that now. And, really start getting a real nice calligraphy. How much do you do? That's you. That's your technique. That's, my daughter is, she's a fine art, trained artist. I'm not. I started as a chemist, and I'm not a fine art trained one like she is. She leaves a lot more powerful brush marks than what I do. And I'm trying to get her to do some filming and stuff, but she hasn't done that yet. She's an amazing painter. Studied a lot of Sargent, painted a lot of stuff and everything. Something about the camera, and she's good in front of the camera. She's taught over, and she's taught in France and England and down through Taiwan and Japan with me, no problem and stuff. But trying to get her to get up in front of the cameras because she could show everyone here quite a bit more. But I love the smaller brush here to get some of these nice calligraphy strokes. How much you're going to leave into the calligraphy, that's up to you. The smaller, or like the small little synthetic here, leaves a lot of nice texture and calligraphy. So, but you can see I'm bringing this up just a bit, and I'll start to look, and I'll get a bit lighter here, and I'll see as I'm putting on this light that I need to bring out that nose just a little bit more. See, I got a nice little textured stroke there. Do you leave that, or do you push off? That's going to be up to you, but you can see there I've eclipsed that nose just a bit. So as we're starting to do this, and with that, after you've referenced that drawing, you can start seeing a little bit of what you did. And so here I'll put some more burnt sienna in this, and I want to put that rounder part of that nose out here, and I'll just work it right into the edge of that light I just pushed in. Maybe pull back just a bit. I like the blurry edges. When I first started working to paint, those were just impossible for me because I came from the decorative arts and everything was so structured because we put on patterns of everything. And so I was off. I couldn't get the nice blurry edge, and that's how I was trained. But now I can start to get some of those blurry edges. Now there's certain things, and I'll start to look for details here. Let's get a bit of that lower nostril light. Let's go ahead and add that. Just rest my hand here. I'll put on too much. That's how I like to do it. And let's focus down that shine, that light. Let's focus that down just one more little bit. Boy, that's too much of a perfect little stroke. Just tap it off a bit there. Don't like the perfect strokes. So I put on too much, and then I paint it out. That's how I realized, that's how I like to do it. That's me. I'd much rather control my light with a dark, because the dark picks it out easier. Now there's probably, 10,000 artists out there that are going to disagree with me on that, but that's how I like to do it. And because the dark paints out the light really easy. So in pure ultramarine, darks can sit on top of lights all the time. That isn't part of it. But there is, and I don't mind. I'm going to push in that darker part of his nostril there, blur off the edges there, and let's put in that bit of a light right here, the lower nostril light right there. Probably just a touch more of the light, a little more gray. It's actually a touch warmer than what I had there. Push that in. You can see though, pushing in, getting in some of these details, it really starts to change him, doesn't it? And let's just take that off just a bit. I don't like to have a stroke into him, so I like let's just get that just a value lighter. Just get brave here, Dave. But usually, it's like me, I like to revisit stuff several times. A little bit against the alla prima, but that's okay. You all understand, I hope. That's what we do, right? There's a lot of artists out there that are they're more purist than what I am, there are times where I'm very much a purist when I'm studying the very technical Dutch technique and stuff, which gives you really the confidence to do a lot of this stuff. And so there are times where I'm just blurring the lower nose here, slightly warm, slightly dark there. I'm an edge painter. I always like to look at those edges. But I'm going to take some of this tone and travel it right down here. That's going to bridge these two areas there, traveling through. Let's put a bit of that lower light. But there are times where I'm a really big purist on stuff. And other times where, especially if I start into alla prima or something, and casual roses and stuff, just let yourself go and have some fun. And all of us are going to paint different. That's a good thing. It's the hardest to copy, but it's a good thing. So let's just get a bit of that. And we'll just touch into that. Don't you just hate it? You had that perfect shine and you took it off just a bit. I like to, there we go. It's got to be, you see, I don't have that catch on there, that light on there just as quite as much. I just want to hit it again. There. Boy, I like these little springy synthetics like that. After the fusions are magnificent for setting the big work, and the springy little synthetic here for setting the little detail bit of that, and it is quite nice. So I put on too much of that, restate that catch light just a bit, put on too much. Let's paint it back here just a bit more. Boy, that's almost nothing in my brush there. Just take that with a little burnt sienna and blue. Just take out just a bit of that. And take out too much there, Dave, and do it again. That's what I got to do. You can see, that's nice when you see it like that. Can you see that? That catch light that I'm working there is just not as powerful. Not too much water. You rinse your brush, make sure you get that water out of there. Otherwise, I touched that board with that would have traveled that water quite a bit. And let's just do that catch light. Sometimes you can get them right away, and then sometimes it takes just a couple of little manipulation. Pinch wipe that brush, get that water out of there, and touch that back. Here we go. That's a little closer. Not quite yet, but a little closer to where I want to go. I want to increase that shine, so I'm going to gray down. Here it's a bit warm, so I'm going to warm it just a touch. Increase that other secondary light from the right onto the eye right here. Just a little bit of it there. And too much again. And we'll go blue and burnt sienna. Sometimes you get into this where you just gotta, you have to fuss with it just a bit, and that's okay. We all end up having to do that at some point. There we go. That's a little better. Not quite yet. I still need the, like I said, we still need those dark shadows and stuff like that. But I want to get a bit more light around him going here. So, and I think I'm gonna stay with this small synthetic for just a minute. I'm gonna go burnt sienna, some yellow, and some white. Here we're gonna look for some of those lighter tones. Beautiful soft tones. There's 2 stages to it here. So let's come right up here by this and pull right up by that eye. And just kind of sometimes use the chisel, sometimes there, so you don't get a super fine-eyed edge there. Let's pull some of that in there. I love that tone. Nice kind of grayed, warm tone here. I'm going to drag that down this side just a bit more. But you can see some of those other tones coming out there as well. Now I'm going to lighten up that tone just a bit more because I think it's probably going to dry just a touch darker than I want it to. So we'll push some of that before we go to the light tone. There. We go like that. Now let's go to the lighter tone. Now, if you want, you can, soften all that brushwork off. That's you decide that. You can, like I showed you, take some water and soften some of that off or whatever. That's up to you. That's your painting. I'm not going to do it on him here. I'm not going to a certain extent, right around the face, I'll fix some areas, but I love brushwork. I love the power of calligraphy. That's why I so enjoyed Frans Hals' paintings. Just push off just a bit. Let's get a touch more light. I mean, I could use, you can follow Sargent and use as large a brush as possible, so I'm kind of violating Sargent here a bit, but this is David's version right now. Finding my way. And but when I put on some of these highlights like this, I do like to put in some of the details up around there like that and work those. But there is something to, about painting this and a good exercise for everybody. Paint this all again. Give yourself no more than 2 hours and paint the painting. And so you have to move, and that would be great. Let's take some of this nice light and warm. Let's make that upper stroke right through here. Fracture that edge just a bit there. And if it doesn't, that's good. Paint up here too at the same time. Push some of that through. We have to change direction of his fur there. But let's just pull. He's graying up along the muzzle here. Watson was a service dog. He's retired, so he's an older dog. So he's graying a little bit up around his muzzle and everything. So we'll get some of that light up there. Like that. Let's pull some of this light and up like through here. A bigger mark of it right down there. And we'll push off. There. Push off some of that mark. Let's step back down towards our yellows. A little bit of burnt sienna, a bit of the orange here. And whisper some of that right back up in here. Get some of that nice little older fur marks right up there. That's kind of good. Let's take just a bit of that burnt sienna and yellow and stroke back in. Like I say, I love to set the lights, but then I love to paint them out into position. See, with that dark, with that medium tone or dark, it's just so much easier. At least for me it is. And I'm going to set these lights and darks there just a bit more. Like that. I love the movement around the eyes, and especially around his eyes there. So, you know, I've got to capture that. I've encroached too much on the eye here. I need some of these grays, and boy, that's been a while since right, see, it's coming back up. Been a while since I painted with that. You can always mix it again. I'm a big advocate of mixing this and make the tone again. We're supposed to be tonal painters here, Dave. Well, let's just make a nice softer gray. Drop that down. See, I lost some of that right around through here with all that kind of playing around a bit. So I want to push that gray up of that lower lid. There. Open that eye back up again, the softness of that eye. And let's put a little light half-tone stroke right down there as well. Right into that. There. Like that. That's pretty good. There. You can, you know, like I say, you can leave more of the mark. You can leave more of a fur mark with just the tip of the brush like that. And it just, you know, I love that calligraphy like that. And I want to put in just a touch of lighter gray. We'll get that water in the brush. You rinse like that. Touch of the lighter gray right here, almost like a rounding, using just a point of the chisel here, like a rounding kind of stroke for the lower bit of the eyelid there, like that. And because you can see that there on there. And this is, you know, I don't concentrate early in the painting. I don't concentrate on any of this, but now it's time to start looking at that and bringing some of those colors back in. Let's get that dark. Oh boy, I rinse that brush again. That's the thing, is they do hold water, boy, these synthetics. So you gotta rinse them out. Let's get that dark, some blue, some orange here, so you get a nice gray. Warm it just a bit with also that burnt sienna. And let's make sure we get that nice dark to the lower part of the eye there. That's that lid line right in there. Bit more of that up at the upper part. It could have just a bit more of that sienna in that. Get nice and warm. There, like that. There. Let's get a bit more sienna. Just restate some of this color right around that eye. There. I'm a big advocate of capturing the eyes. Work them, and you know, and it takes you. Sometimes, you know, it takes you a little bit to capture those eyes, but you know, this is a main part of the painting here. So fuss them a little bit and capture them. Capture those colors. Capture that movement of them. You know, we want to make sure that gray pulls out just a bit more. Restate that just a bit. There. That's getting better, getting closer. There's just a little bit of a mark. I'm a little flat right there. Needs to come out a little bit more. And you know, you might see it. That's the individual thing. You might see it a little different than I see it, and that's great. That's what makes us all different. But like I say, put on too much, and then I'll paint it back out again. And it's kind of funny. This is I just finished that other retriever, and this is my second one, and then I'm going to go paint that wolf. My eye's a little bit more attuned to the tone this time around than it was with the first retriever. And you know, it has been quite a while since I painted the dogs, and so it's kind of it is, you know, where you do them more often, or if you pick up on the tones just a little faster, and I'm finding that and especially painting him this time right now. Here, let's drop this down just a bit. It's not exciting on the video to paint something like that, but let me tell you, you know, when you're painting, this is such an important part of the entire painting, especially this eye that I'm kind of fussing with right here on this side. This is a huge part of the painting, and so you work it just a bit. Let's bring that catch light up just a bit more. It's a little bit narrow compared to the other one there, so let's just round that up just a bit. There. A lot better. Okay. Now, to the other side, boy, we don't do too much on that other eye there, but I do want to set some of those nice warm tones back up in here. Even though you don't see them too much into the photo reference here, I do want to warm that up a bit, and a little more so than what the photo reference shows, just because I love the warmth in an eye. I like to do, and you know, I want my customers to see that warmth, that beautiful warmth into the eye. Now in the other one, you know, I didn't do it this one, but the other one that's back there, I put that Diarylide Yellow glow into it first, but this one doesn't have a glow because of the light source and stuff. He doesn't have a glow this time, so I didn't put that in. So we have this. So now what we'll do is we'll come in. I'm going to go back to my number 8, and I'm going to start working some of the tones again. I'm going to start over here by the light side. Let's grab some of this lighter yellow, orange kind of color, and I'm going to restate some of the tones that were close to what we used in the first time. Take some of them alla prima off and out the edge. Work the edges just a bit, and gray this just a bit. A little green. Work through now with more power of a stroke. That's going to fur him up a bit. Here, let's put in that little hit of the bit of that sienna there, maybe a touch of green in it. Here. There we go. And a little bit more sienna. Touch of green right into that. Let some of that color there. A little bit more light. So I'm doing real quick, and this is what, you know, kind of like what I'm doing now is really what the alla prima would do, is grabbing it real quick and making these color marks a little quicker. But by going through first, especially if I'm in a teaching class, going through first, establishing your what we do in Premier Coup, what's called the mosaic of tones. It's a lot easier to come back and loosen up because you know right about that area that you're going for or what you're going for with that tone. So it makes it a little bit easier to paint it, you know, a second time, and to get a little more calligraphy if you want to your painting, which I want to get just a touch more calligraphy to this. There we go. And let's take some of that, even slightly on the green side here. It's got just a bit pulling down here. Like that. That's a bad hair day on him right there, so I'll have to fix that up. Yeah. I don't get frustrated with something like that. I just kind of laugh at it a little bit. It keeps it fun. And let's get just a bit, that's a bit of that darker tone that sits underneath there. Now let's get back up to that brighter tone. Push that in there. And just kind of incorporate those colors right there like that. That looks better. And maybe a little hit of that tone further out. It's that nice loose hair to the ear there, like that. That's kind of better. And let's get a bit more warm light right up there. Pull down and through. That nice warmth here. See if I still got a little bit of wet color on the edge of that ear, and I just blur those together. And I like that. And that's one good reason not to jump around too much, because those edges will stay a bit wet for a bit, and you could use some water and just blur their edges there, and it'll be all right. Let's take some of this. Let's cool it. Just anytime you're passing that halfway, cool over just a little bit. But let's keep this into the light right there. Well, that's a good tone. And just drag some of that through here. I want to define that center line of his head there a bit more. Let's get a bit lighter. And just light pressure on your brush, and you'll get that nice hair calligraphy that I like to use on the animals with these little fusion brushes. I love the fusions. They do so much. And they give you a nice little hair calligraphy here. Let's put a bit more light. Work that through there. Just whisper, dry, scumble there. Some of this pulls down this way. There. Slightly darker, slightly grayer. I'm going to put just a bit of extender in this to make the color slide just a touch. Here. Let's pull through. Establish that. Pull some of that right through. It could be. No, now, when you're putting these on, if you go too much, you'll eliminate everything you did, and so you have to be kind of careful. Think smaller, lighter, smaller. That's the good rule of art. Law of disproportionate color, what artists use. Lighter, smaller. So don't get rid of all the tones we did before. We're just accentuating them with a little light brush calligraphy over them, causing some of the movement of the hair and stuff here. So don't get rid of all those underlying tones. That's what's going to give him so much interest there, right? Let's take just a bit of that light right out of that center line. It's got kind of like a old barbershop, barber breaking his hair there. Kind of neat. Let's gray down. A little lighter, a little gray. So I'm adding an extender just to thin the color and make it slide over the surface just a bit like that. I like that calligraphy like this. We'll just add a bit of that down and up by his eye here, down this side, over those edges. Touch more. I think I want to, before I leave that area up there again, I want to reset that. I love that light on the upper brow. Make that a bit bigger and a bit more powerful. There. So it could be and I do like to do it with as large a brush as possible. That small one sometimes just doesn't, it does great detail, but it's nice to have a combination or a mixing of both of them there. That works as well. So you get a calligraphy from both of them, and you get this type of calligraphy going, man, you get a lot of nice interest into your painting. Working it. So You wouldn't do that much with pure Alla Prima like I'm doing here, so it's a bit off a bit, but it's fun. I'm a tone painter. I spent a couple hours getting to this point. I want to work the tones a bit because I like that. This is the part of the painting I really like. Okay, let's get down here with some of that gray and cool, light. Let's get some of that over here. Let's reset that right back there into that light of his eye. It's got just a bit darker. Burnt sienna, green. Cool it with a little red violet. Here. Pull that down. Here. He's got this wonderful little push up of the hair. So a lot of times I like to do it with the dark. See how that just pulls, that dark just shapes so well. Here. Now I want to get this, take some of this color. I'm going to add some extender to it so it slides. Just a touch lighter. I want to get the work on the plane of this side of his face here. A little bit more, not quite vertical, slightly angled strokes there. Let's go a bit more to the burnt sienna and a bit of that. As you head darker, go to the red violet. And get that right in there as well. Round that in. Round that up and in there. And that here, right there. And let's go back, warm this just a bit. Drag that up and through. Lift off. Grab some more, drag it up and through, lift off, and you get that nice transitional tone there. Let's pick up a bit more light, lighten that up. Let's gray that. This is completely dry here. Let's see if we can reconstitute some of it. Yes, we can. So we'll get this gray. Just start adding a little bit of water onto your glass here. And it'll start moving that pigment right up. If not, you can just grab some of your finger and push it a minute. That's a beautiful little tone. So let's grab that right up here, right above his eye again. Reset that nice lift off light there. Down this direction and over front of that eye there. Right, just drag it ever so lightly across that eye there. Breaks that. And a little bit lighter, just a touch lighter. Drag that right across. You could use the chisel if you want. You could. There's all kinds of ways. In the other one I showed all kinds of ways to make hair, from a bristle brush to everything. But I do love the painterly look of it. Now, his top of his whole forehead right here starts to get a little flat because I've lost the shadow plane up there. See, so I need to restate that. Let's get some burnt sienna and some green before I get too much fussy on the thing. That's a big area I lost in the painting right here. So I want to get that down. That's a bit dark. Some of my color theory students probably just fell out of your chair when I put that on. It's like, come on, Dave, that's too dark. So let's lighten that up, make that a little bit more, a little bit more of the burnt sienna. Maybe toss in a bit of that orange in there, a bit of that yellow. Vary that tone just a bit more. Let's back out some of that dark. That's much better. That's more like I know what I'm doing. Pull some of that down here. We'll incorporate that and get that nice. Let's get some of that nice yellow in there again. Yellow oxide. Right onto the little half tone. And that happens, that's the thing is I was painting all those other things and worrying about his head, and I painted out most of that shadow tone. So, you just go add it back. What's wrong with that? We can do that. Now pull some light down. Let's try not to eliminate it too much there, Dave. We'll be back here putting it back in again. But see how that rounds up his head a lot better. And it's the angles now. Now you got to slow way down and look at those angles. That angle is a very important one right there, and I want to capture that. That angle, and it's kind of a turning angle here. This is real tight, that's loose, and that one goes back just a bit. So this one is very important right in there. And I want to catch that angle because that's flattening out the top part right there, or the plane that he needs to have right in there. So watch your calligraphy. This rounds around to the back there. Watch your calligraphy. So I'm saying you're gonna get that. Let's get this nice little, but you can play these tones. Now see, if I was pure all prima, there's some of these tones I just let go. I mean, and I wouldn't concentrate that much on them. But you know, I mean, it's I have the time here, so I'm gonna do it. I said, I told myself I want to try to paint this in about 3 hours, and I'd love to try this again in about 2 hours. So it would be great to try to trim an hour off and work a little faster. Grab some of those tones a little quicker. That could be a bit lighter. And that's what you do. That's how. And you see, the thing is, so many people say, okay, so why the speed? The speed brings a casual power to your painting. And when you start taking too long to paint something, it gets stiff. So, we do timed paintings like this, and we try to work as fast and efficiently as possible. And all the great masters said that. Work fast, work efficient. Because there's, this, and Sargent said, the most power comes from the first stroke. For example, if I come in here and I pull down this light stroke, that stroke is now at its ultimate power. It's a little too warm, but it's ultimate power, right? And he said that from that point on, he'd always you're not allowed to touch a stroke more than 2 more times, but he would say the stroke, as I start to touch it, starts to lose its power. So, if you want a more powerful painting, you need to put the strokes on and not touch them. That's basically, in a nutshell, what it's all about. And I'm going to gray this up just a bit, because there's just a little bit of an underlying gray. God, I can't forget to have that nice cerulean. Cerulean grays it so much better sometimes than that phthalo. It's a little hard to use, but that phthalo I needed for the real dark colors. So let's get this gray. See, that's a beautiful gray right in there, coming down off of that eye. Right there, that little undertone there. Let's get it a little lighter. Right in there. Just push that in. Let's just incorporate that gray into those other strokes there. And then I'm going to push that little bit of lighter warmth. Just a little curve of it right up there like that, rounding that socket just a bit. Right like that. See, that's the calligraphy I like. And let's just light and warm this down. Set that gray in just a bit. That's nice. Boom. Try to... Sometimes, with the acrylics, and the oil's always dry just right about what the value is, what you're working with. But the acrylics, the binders and stuff that are used are kind of a cloudy white, and they tend to dry down just a bit. So we know that. Acrylics dry a little bit darker. So that's all you got to do, is just work your tones a little lighter so that they will dry a bit darker. Now take a look at that back there on that camera. And you should be getting up and taking a look at it every once in a while. And that's kind of important. Let's get that. How many times have I reset this light up there? Well, it dries down, and as you get more experienced in it, you'll get closer, faster. That'll happen as you learn it, and as your brush gets more confidence, and you learn not to play and with it. And I don't do portraits like this very often, dog portraits and animal portraits. I should do more. I love flowers, but and I love wildlife, but I should do some more of these because it's really good for your brush to paint all the different genres. That's what I always tell my students, and it is so true. Let's just get a bit more of that light, fuzz off that edge, pull this plane down that eye, slightly different. Grab that across there. See, I love all that. That's the olive that I like. Just grab some of that movement. Let's grab nice older dog, put some of this nice gray. Just whispered a bit right across there. View of it just whispered through. There, like that. And you can soften him out too. There's a lot of you out there that like to have him softer, and sure enough, you can do that. And let's get some siennas, yellows, grays. Boy, that, and gray with a little green. Boy, and that green grayed that real quick. Here, a little bit of cool. I'm going to go back up on this other side of the forehead and set that lighter tone again. Kind of a little bit more hair, set this back just a bit. Go just a whisper stroke, and it just makes that nice kind of curve there, makes the nice hair kind of curving down through there. And just a bit back there. And I had flattened out part of his ear over here. We remember that from looking at our drawing again, so I want to grab some burnt sienna and green, maybe just a touch of our violets. Doesn't take much green. Gray that out. Pull that out just a bit, leave some of that nice movement. But I could go, I'm just a little bit yellow compared to that one over there as I look across, but we'll take care of that. A lot of just little fine-tuning. I'm to the point where I'm fine-tuning my tones, and as I'm fine-tuning my tones, I'm thinking about the lower part of my painting. Just what do I want to do with that? How do I want to finish that off? And I want to put some nice, powerful alla prima, I think, in their big, powerful. I'm going to channel Franz Hals and see if I can get some of that nice look that he did here, and push some of this light down there like that. Grab some of that here, and let's just pull down a little different. There, like that. And could go a bit darker. A little dark green. Cool it with violet and burnt sienna. Boy, that's a good grayish tone. Just work that a bit, but then let's cool it and red it up just a bit here. That's better. Work that edge there too. See, I put on a lot of paint, so it's going to stay wet there for a little bit, and you just pull down through, and you'll get that look of hair, and give it that oil look. But it's so much easier, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, I loved all the years I painted with oils, and but it's so much easier for me with the acrylics that it's dry. And if I want to really work something, I put on real thick paint, and then I just push it. Otherwise, I'll let it dry up so I don't mess it up, and I'll revisit it if I need to. But you know, I just put on thick paint like that. That edge is wet and will stay wet, and I can come back here and just manipulate through it. And so in just a few minutes, if I want to work it again, I'll just let it dry for a few minutes, and then I can come back and work it again without disrupting everything I did before. And to me, that's a lot easier. There's people that'll disagree, and that's okay. But for me, for my hand and the way I like to paint, that's just a lot easier for me. And since I'm a tone painter anyway, that works. So let's just get a little more sienna and yellow into that cool. And let's just pull down that edge, that outer edge, and just fuzz that out a bit and blur that out. Get that nice lost edge out over there. He has that one, makes him look like bad hair over there. I'll probably have to restate that or take that off. Or you could just take some water and scrub out and take some of that out. That's the nice thing about acrylics there too. We can do that. But I like that lost edge. But I really kind of want to bring up, let me just sidetrack here for a second, some of my violets and some siennas. A little bit of that nice cerulean here. Lighten this up and get that, just a sparkle of that through light right over here. I think it's kind of nice right down that edge there. A little bit of that through light through there. I think that's kind of cool. I like sparkles of light through. And it used to, you know, I used to not know quite, but as you paint more and more with some of these, you see just a little bit more. Now that small brush is leaving a lot of calligraphy over there for me, more than what I really want. So I'm going to take my larger brush, a little bit of water with it, and just pull out, maybe soften with a paper towel there just a bit. But I like that sparkle of that light right there. Pulled out. Dance that edge just a bit there. And that will dry down. And that's the thing, is look at it and that'll dry down. And we want maybe up on the other side here, up over here, a little bit of that, more of that light as well. Let's get it just a touch warmer. Bit of that cerulean though. Back up over here, reset that. Yeah, see that, a little bit of warmth in there. It's really nice. And see, I love setting colors like this. The light colors to it. You know, just, now if you want it soft, put a little water in it. And that, see how that instantly softens it out here. And put in as much calligraphy as you want into that. You know, that's how much, you know, if you work it again and again, it gets softer and softer. Boy, that was a lot of water. It just dripped right off my brush. And a little dirty paper towel there. That's kind of nice. I like that kind of. And little hits of, like right up there on the photo, but by his ear, it's kind of nice to have that light show up there as well. And I like lost edges. I like blurry edges into the back. That's really a nice portrait like that. Let's take some of that and blur those edges of that ear back there like that. And I lost the that upper point, and that's kind of bad there. So we'll fix that right up into that negatively, which means painting it, the shape of it with the background rather than the positive of painting it with the ear. So we'll pull that up like that. See if we leave that just a could have, I still really like, I'm going to change paper towels here, still really like that real warm hit stroke. Get a bit of that orange in there, right down that edge. Could have a bit of light, but I just like working those edges. You know, to me, one of the great parts about the dogs is their ears. They're always so, you know, and I just like capture them a little closer than what I'm doing there. Let's get a bit of that light, track up that side of that head again. And you can blur that around there. And let's work that edge just a bit. And that nice warm. Sometimes it's nice just to add water to thin it out and just work that tone a couple of strokes. And yeah, let's get just a couple strokes of light up through there. And remember, that's going to dry down just a touch, so you can, there's a smaller little light set right in there. Actually, a touch more of a shadow in there too. There. Hits that better. Now I got to bring back that light roundness here to his ear. Come on, Dave, get that. There. And let's go back to our smaller one here and just pick up a bit of dark. Set that back in again. And it you know, you just like, okay, you know, we should have left that, you know, why. It's really kind of easy just to add it again if you need to. You know, I'm not bothered by that. And pure Oliprima, you know, you should be a little more cautious maybe. But I love to go through different cycles of being really casual and then, you know, not quite so much, but I like the different cycles of the painting here. Now, this side of his face could come down just a bit more. Push that edge of that nose in just a touch there. And that could be just a little bit lighter. So you see all these small little bits here. There we go. Gets him closer and closer. Let's get a nice little half tone lighter and kind of swing that up here. But that's why, you know, even though we're Oliprima with this, you know, working these tones and building up, building up, building up, is giving you a nice look. It's a great way to approach it. So, and we're about 2.5 hours into the painting, so not quite 2.5 hours. But you see how many times I've gone back up over that area there, setting that tone, which is not, you know, where some people will not consider the Oliprima, but with the acrylics, that sure makes it a lot easier, especially, you know, because we don't always know just how much an acrylic is going to dry down, because it depends on the colors around it and the layers that you're using, what colors are underneath it. So sometimes an acrylic painter painting Oliprima, we have to adjust a couple times. There, like that. That's not too bad. I like that. It could have just a little bit lighter and hit those edges. Leave some of that brushwork there. There, like that. Now he has a little bit more defined shadow. I'll state that, and then I'm going to go down, I think, and work on some of the lower part of his fur and stuff. I'm kind of liking that eye there. You know, we'll have a, I've got to work the, maybe I should work these shadows on this lower or this upper lip here on this side. Work those again, little gray. Don't forget to put in a bit of that burnt sienna just to keep it warm and get an. Otherwise, you know, the lip here and or what's going on here with his lip and his face are going to look different from each other. So be too far away from each other. Let's put a half tone in there. Soften that. That's a better gray tone. Pull that up and around just a touch. Gray that. That's a nice little tone there. That worked. Need a bit of that tone right over here. Do like that, but I just a little bit of that scumbling. See, that works so well with that. We could actually put a little bit lighter tone, just a touch warmer, right there. It's a bit more orange than what I have in my brush right now. Set that. Darn, it's not quite there. A little bit more orange and yellow. Remember, it's going to dry down too, so you have to see it more of a mark. Thought I had that with that first application of it, and it dried down. So I get to do it again. My Pyranone here is almost too dirty with the blue. But we're close, so I'm not going to put out any more. Expensive, powerful little pigment, though. Doesn't take very much to do what you want to do with it. Just a nice, I always call it a high-performance mixing pigment. I love it in other pigments. A little cooler, a little darker here. Set those again. And the second time through, you get a bit more depth into your coloring here. A bit more depth. Here, a little bit more burnt sienna. A little bit. Could add a touch of violet in there, but that just works really great. Let's get this a little deeper, a little grayer. Set some of that right back. Just a bit more gray. I do like some of that warmth around his eyes. Here. And I pulled down just a bit. You gotta make sure to keep that cheek and check there. Let's make sure this is cool. A little violet. Right there. That light. Pull down just a bit. There. A bit heavier. There. Yeah, let's get it just a touch more. So you know it's all refined, but you know sometimes you're painting quick. Boy, you don't get that refined. You just get that close, and then that's it. You call that, you know. But that's going to dry down, and I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to take some lighter color here with a bit more of the gray, and set this kind of upper lid right there a bit. Maybe pull up and around just a touch more for his eye. I like that, and maybe we'll work. Matter of fact, I'm going to go back to my detail brush here for just a second because these are small little hits here. Gray that down just a bit. And some smaller little upper lid lines here that around that eye that just gives him such pretty look there. Don't eclipse the eye too much, you'll make him angry. Bit more light. There's a bit lighter mark, and leave the mark, leave the, that's not light enough. Leave the mark, leave the stroke. There. Just a bit more. And this is, those of you that love texture, this is when you're texturing as well. You're texturing those strokes, right? We'll pull down. Now see, before I pushed that tone, so I'm not pulling down that far into the eye anymore. I'm staying right up here by the apex of the roundest part of this, that socket, when that's what's putting in the small little light right up there. I've already blurred the tones together. I don't need to do that again. There. Just some of that feathering there. Let's push a bit more of that, slightly cooler. A little coolness into it. Push a bit of that right in there. I like that little calligraphy, that little brush calligraphy in like that. That just works. And it's the calligraphy, I feel. It's like what Hall says. It's that calligraphy that just gives that extra little punch of life. I'm not going to do rapier-like strokes, though, but I am going to do some. There we go. Okay, let's go. I'll go down and then I'll revisit that top just one more time. But I want to here go quickly down here to the bottom, and I'm going to use my 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to start setting. We haven't set any of our lighter lights down there, and we need to do that before we start finalizing anything. Let's get this light warm. I'm going to add a little extender to this too. This is going to cause my colors to slide quite a bit. And I'm just going to kind of catch the fur, the angles, and dress his fur here just a bit. Let's go up just a touch here. You can see that over to the side here a bit. Now you can see I'm lower in value right now, and I'm right about in there. So I haven't put the light on. I'm going to come through this first. Little extender, and it's going to stay wet for several minutes, and that's going to give me time to work this if I want to. But I'm working on a dry bit, so that also gives me a nice look that I like. I'm going to push that light over the edge there just a bit and recede it. Now, if I want it to really recede, rinse your brush, take a little bit of water, and just pull right through until you get rid of, softened out some of that calligraphy. And see what that does? That works pretty nice. Now we could get, you can start getting really finite with your tone and say, I need a little bit more of that sienna back there. I put in a little too much, but that works. I could lighten that just a touch. That works. Let's, I always like to redress the darks before I get into the lights. I'm going to have to stop painting here real soon because I'm running out of burnt sienna. And put just a touch of extender, and again, I'm not blending with it. I'm just causes the color just to slide over the surface, which is what I like. And I like that read there like that. And a bit more sienna. Restate that lower bit there. See my tones a lot better. Drop some of that in there. Nice shadow side to him here. And drop some of this down, nice dark. Let it come out a bit. Work out down through here. Just scrub it out. And to see how much I put down here is now, and I can soften with a paper towel, is now controlled by the overall contrast I want in the painting. But I've got a lot of his face done now that I can see how much of the dark I want to push down there. That's my dogs getting up, telling me they're going to be over here in a minute, telling me it's time to take them for their walk. But I'm going to get out some more burnt sienna. When you do a lot of painting, you get the colors in big jars so that they, just put out some more burnt sienna here. getting close, so just a little bit more. And there we go. Let's just work this. A little more sienna here. Let's just work that warmer here, and some more yellow right in here into that sienna. Let's just grab some of that right down here. And see, I use a lot of paint here, and it's just going to stay wet, and you can work some of those nice areas. You can pull through with a little paper towel. I like to do that, especially as I'm heading out away from some of the painting there, or where I want to, you know, my center of interest and stuff. Here, bit of those siennas, darker siennas coming forward here. A little blue sienna, some violet. Yeah, right up too far into his ear. I'll be restating that again. Pull some of that back. Let that just fade away there. Now, I've got this cut off a bit here too, so I want to thicken his body just a bit. Let's get a bit of that dark. See, a few of those darker tones just really help just the overall painting. Pulls it right up there towards his eye there too. So blue and burnt sienna is just great on him here though. Let's grab some extender into this. Work. That's a beautiful tone to come tap around through there a bit. There. Let some of that just fade away. Sometimes, you know, I'll push some tone out there and read it just a little bit darker and stuff than what it actually is on him, and that's the artist, you know. Sometimes something inside tells you to do that, and you just got to listen to it, you know, to do that. Let's get a little sienna into that. Bit of my brighter yellows and some sienna. Don't over mix it up too much so that when you slide here, you get that beautiful sliding alla prima kind of look, the modeling of those tones and stuff out there, and the look to that. Let's go just a touch lighter. Boom, pull that stroke out. Now that's just a bit dark, so all I do is, a bit light, so I'll just put some dark on my brush and just come right down through it. And see this? That's that pretty look. You're using thick paint, a little bit of extender in it. That's giving you a nice look to it. A nice working time. I don't want, I don't need hours to do this. I just need 5-10 minutes of just real loose color that I can work through. That's all I need. Any more than that, and I'll play with it and it'll blend. And I don't want to do that. Incorporate those colors together a bit. That's not very good there. Let's take a bit more sienna. Pull down through that. A little smoother in the tone. I don't like that much blue coming out into the tone, because he's not a blue dog. Let's grab some light, some yellow, some of those yellows right here. Let's grab that highlight that's right there. That pulls down, and that could go a touch lighter yet. Sometimes I'll let my colors get really thick to do this kind of stuff too. You let them out over, set them out in the early morning for an afternoon painting. Let them tighten up a lot. Get thick. And I like that feeling too sometimes. There. Grab some of this. Here. There we go. Maybe a more powerful little stroke right in there. So I roll my brush sometimes over onto the sides and stuff, and that works really well. Okay, let's, and we're going to gray, and I'm going to add a little bit of that violet background out here, and to this, violets, a little bit of my cerulean there, and some of my warm tones together to create some of these lost edges. Now I'm going to add some extender and some water to really thin it out. It's really thick, and I don't want that thickness down here. I want thin. I want thin color that doesn't have as much power. And see, the violet grays that all down. I'm going to incorporate those violet colors, the outside background, into the dog right there, so everything starts to soften out. See? Working with your background is one of the most important things. Let's just grab some of this nice color. See, that gives me, I can make the lost edges of our dog here. We can pull some back in, make the lost edges, but the violets that were showing up there into the backgrounds are so important for those lost edges there of the dog. And let's go lighter, not quite as much violet. Let's find some of those light highlights that we'll find right up there. Pull those through. And your own individual calligraphy, this is when it can really start to come out. I'm just going to push that. So if I want to soften it, see, I've got so much paint and it's wet, I can push it just like an oils. So acrylics can do what the oils do. You don't have as long to work with it, unless you really use a lot of extender, which I don't like to do. I used to. Well, I used to like to paint with a lot of extender. And now it's just get the paints thick. Don't play around with them forever. And you can do a lot of fun looks. Now that might be too much calligraphy down there. I don't think so. I'll push it around a bit. But see how I can just add some little stuff, or I can grab some of the yellows and other colors and just kind of go through a bit and push in all of that lovely calligraphy there in his body. There, like that. Takes a powerful brush. Takes some confidence. That'll come with time. Like I always tell my students, it just comes with time. If you're painting just once a month, you're looking at several years. But if you're painting, once or twice a week, then it goes relatively quickly to get that confidence. Go. And let's be confident, Dave. Drop that over. See, just kind of read a little bit of that movement. You don't need to get too wide. Just want to capture. And some of it, you might just soften down because, some of him here looks like a bad hair day. So we just might want to calm some of it down. But let's get just a bit of that sienna with that. Pull right down through that. There. That's better. There. How much you do? See, I need a bit of a violet, so this is starting to tack a bit, so I'll loosen it up with some solvent, and then I can add some extender to work it back again. I'll get some of that violet out here on the edges, cause that receding of him just a bit. You can see it in the picture. You can see more of that violet on him back there. See? There we go. And I want to build up. I like the dogs when they have these nice chest lights right through there. There, like that. That's kind of nice. And of course this will dry down, so I think we'll be okay because I don't want to get too much here. But I think we'll be okay. Let this dry down. And let's put a... Now, adding the Diarylide Yellow to this, little Hansa Yellow to your burnt sienna, you get this kind of glowy color here. It glows. And you can whisper that through to bring out. Now, the whites, as soon as we add this to it, will soften it. But, you know, he has some really golden areas here that we might want to just bring out a bit more. Now, that'll dry down too, so. And then let's just grab some light, stroke right back through that again. Not all of it out, just take out some of it. Here. Down like that. Just capture the tones. And the strokes don't have to be really accurate because, you know, when the painting is gone, no one's going to hang the photograph right next to it. So you don't have to be super accurate with capturing the calligraphy of the body. It doesn't. Just get some of these nice, beautiful tones in there too, though. That's kind of fun. Since we're tone painters, we can do that. Let's just grab those nice warms right there. That's nice. Now, carry that tone. That's a beautiful, nice, glowy, warm tone. Let's carry it a bit. Don't get rid of all your other tone. Just carry it a bit here. And Dave, don't take out all that shadow up there at the top. Don't do that either. Boy, so many rules, huh? There we go. That looks good. Let's put just a, even though he doesn't have it, let's put a bit of an edge right over there of that. I just love it. And a bit right out on that ear maybe. Right there. That's kind of nice. Here. And let's get some of this grade and violet and shape up just his outside edge here just a bit. Some few of those. Sometimes I like to make the counter stroke, and I like that. Then I want to give a feeling of a little bit more full chest right here that he has. So I'm just going to push a bit more of that out like that. What a beautiful animal. He's a beautiful dog. Watson, not Winston, Watson. He was a service animal, now he's retired. And that's a fun one to paint. I want to get that kind of puka dark out. That's kind of interesting. There. And a little bit there, and I think I will let him dry up and take a look. That might be too dark, but it might be kind of nice to have that tone down there like that. Could pull out a little more out. That needs to have a bit of green and blue in it. When you're up in there, and cool that off, I think you can get away with it, but you know, you're got so many finite tones there, you really need to get that in there. Yeah, that really makes a difference. Get that cool color and gray it out. That really makes a difference there. So now there's some, I encroached on his eye a bit, and I think I'll do that. And then I need to step back and look at it. That's pretty good. And that's kind of where I want to capture. I might let this dry, push a little bit more light, which I think would probably pop him just a bit farther forward, you know. But I encroached on his eye here just a bit, so I want to grab, and I have that kind of tone. And then it's good to put it away for a few hours and maybe for a few days. Some artists do it for a few days and then come bring it back out and take a look at it. But the thing is, with alla prima, you shouldn't touch it because you're a different artist that next time through. But it's good to look through it and evaluate it again and see if you see anything a little bit different on it that you might want to do. So that pulls a bit closer to what his eye is there. And I'll reset to look at that up here onto this side here. I could use just a whisper. I like it to be just a touch granulated. That gives a little bit more to the tone, and it adds just that extra little interest there to the around the eye socket. And I'm going to increase the light of that catch light just a bit more there, and yeah, just that'll dry down, so I think I'll be okay. Just a little secondary one there, and just a little bit grayer here. There. And I do kind of like that. That's a bit light. I might just push it back in with some toned sienna here. Boy, you rinse that brush, get out of it. And a little bit of the toned color, just to soften that in. Now, when those eyes are really dry, then you take your violet color, which is your red violet and some blue here. You can even put a bit of green in, which causes it to gray, but don't get it too dirty. Leave it kind of clear color. I mean, kind of intense, because it's a nice, deep, intense shadow. And you put on just a bit of the upper eyelid shadow on the eye, pulling it across. That sets the eye back into the socket just a bit more there. And I really need to restate those catch lights on the lower eye there. Here on the back lower eye, just a little mark and a little mark, a couple of them there. And too big, just take some of your gray, but you can also do that with the shadow there, just taking that down just a bit there. That looks pretty good. Now, and I go through and I look at all my shines and stuff and make sure that I have all of my my shines. Now, we might want to stipple up his nose a little bit. You can take a liner brush and put on just a couple of whiskers. I don't get too carried away with that kind of stuff, but you're painting, you can decide if you want to have some additional whiskers and stuff. I want to have just a little more light on his nose, I think. And you'll probably, you'll probably see a few other little areas as you step back and start to look at it. I always take him through an evaluation process and look at it. And I have my wife and especially my daughter, because she brings a whole other perspective into it, take a look at it. And we all have one common goal when we start to do that, so I need to put a little more light on that nose, is to make me look good. And so it's kind of like, I use their eyes to help me. My daughter's formally trained, I'm not, and I learned through observation and stuff, and so, I learned through, and so it's nice to have all the other opinions and looks, and so I'll go through and just put a little bit of this and get that. Don't forget to keep that sienna in there, because that's so important, so this nose doesn't get stuck on. Right, that's a beautiful tone right there, heading into that. There we go. He has all these real soft kind of violet tones here onto his nose, and just a bit more of a darker shadow right up that center like in humans, I heard one magnificent portrait painter call it Cleopatra's fulcrum. Is this part, well, I got a mustache, but it's this part right there in your nose, Cleopatra's fulcrum. And I hadn't heard that. But I'm going to trust him since he's a master at it. But this, there we go. Just put a little bit of that in. So you can refine like that, a touch more here and there, little bits of tone, little marks of tone. But, you know, I don't like to do too much because then I'll start to get out of the freedom that I start to have with all the primer. I probably will take just a liner brush or two and put something on. Usually what I like to do is to let it dry completely, put on a good coat of extender over the whole thing, because extender kind of wakes up all the tones here when you're painting. And I walked away with my big brush, but I'll show you here. Here I have this one. It kind of wakes up all these tones, and see all of the warm tones that are there underneath. And so this is what it's going to look like when it's varnished here. You can see what the painting looks like here. That's why I love acrylics. I just did all this stuff, and I can put this wet extender over and take a look at it, you know. And you know what I think? Isn't this just fun? I mean, there was times, you know, for those of you who are learning, I know a lot of you follow me, a lot of my students, and a lot of you painting with me in, you know, I'm going to put this in a class called The Art of Seeing. And we're learning how to see, and we're learning how to get so many things. And I know there's frustration too, because when you're recreating it, you're going to go to a little bit of a copy mode of me and stuff, and I know there's frustration with it. I've been there too, but just paint through it, because this is fun. This is what we've chosen to do, and it's fun, and we must keep it fun. Dear Justice. So I see those tones, I feel, yeah, I can push a little bit of light right out through there. That's just kind of fun into his body there. That's kind of fun. And let's just push sometimes you put that, see that extender on there, and you see some of this. Let's push a lighter tone right up here. That'll draw us a lot more light-dark contrast right up there by his eye. And something when you put that extender over the surface, that, you know, the color just slides on there really well. So be careful not to blend it too much, because it slides really easy. Let's push a little more light right there and just pull out. That lifts his face off there again. Just like that. I think that's, if I don't stop there, but see that last little ring of light kind of lifted. I'm looking at my monitor right there, kind of what you're seeing there, right there, lifted that off. Do you want to push that, you know, dark back up over there? I look for it, you know, it's what some artists call the push and pull of the painting, you know, pushing it back and pulling some things forward and stuff. Do you want to, you know, restate that dark on that ear right there? And do you do it more of a, you know, that extender on there is really wet, so it's just kind of, the tone will move really easy. That's what I want to say there. So it'll move really easy. And do I want to put more light right up there? Sometimes, you know, you get this way in the painting where it's just been such a great, let's see, we're 3.5 hours, somewhere around in there. No, we're about see, I'm watching my shot clock there, so we're 90 minutes into this one and about 90 minutes into the other one, so about 3 hours, somewhere around there. Anyway, you know, it's fun. It's just fun, and there are times where some paintings don't work, and you just have fun with it anyway. And we'll warm this up. You know, question is, do I want to push? And I think I do, just a touch more of that light. And sometimes I step back and I look at it, you know, with a cup of coffee or a good drink, good stiff drink if it didn't go well, and decide, you know, from way back. It's not good to decide up close. It's best to decide way back. Let's go to my bigger brush. standing way back and look at the impact of what your stroke is going to do, what that mark is going to do. Real light. And so that's just a little bit lighter, which are dry to about the same color. So I got to go quite a bit lighter if I want to make an impact, because it's going to dry down a value or two here. There we go. Do I want to leave that light? I think I do. I think I want to leave that light. Boy, I like some of that warmth coming down through there as well. I think I'm just going to take some of that right off that edge right there. Right off the edge on that one corner. And yeah, that kind of sparks him up. And let's put a bit of that through light right back up over here. It's nice to look at him with that extender on there. Now I can soften that edge back up over here. A little bit more of that sienna in that. Right off over there, that's good. Just take that right into him as well. So you get a nice through light right there. And maybe we'll let this, you know, the head up here just go softer. I like that St. Andrew's crossing. If his head's that way, you're crossing your tone that way. And that's kind of fun. So you look at that. That's, golly, something's telling me, get brave, Dave, and do it again right in there. There we go, just a little bit more. And, you know, before I'd like blend out a stroke like that, and it's going to dry down, and, you know, now I leave it, and you can blur off the edges here. You know, just blur off some of your edges so it's a little softer, and you get a nice alla prima look to him there. I'm going to tap off some of that extender there. There we go. So that's how I do it. I'm probably going to just manipulate the edges and stuff here. It's a little stiff right there for me, and so I like to, my final thing is I go back and I look at my edges, how they're handling the edges up against my light and my background. I like them to be kind of blurred and lost here. You know, you have to make an evaluation of that against the dog itself, but I love that about when you're doing alla prima lost little portraits like this, and you know, to break some of those edges. So I'll probably manipulate the edges here. Sit back and do that just a little bit, but because I do like that look there. Have that. That's a bit wonky right up there, so I'll put some color, and you know, and check your drawing if you're learning. Check your drawing, let it dry, check your drawing, see if there's anything that you've come off a little bit on. That's how you learn. See if you can find it first, and then set your plastic over it and check. But seeing if you can find it first is going to help you with your drawing skills. And it's time to call this one, Dave, so that you don't overdo it a bit. Just want to make sure I have that tone in there. There, like that. Let's put just a... They're just fun. Sometimes you just don't want to stop. You know, but you lose the spontaneity of it here if you don't stop soon here, Dave. So it is time. There, like that. Kind of fun. All right. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed. That's 16 by 20. And then I wish I had the frame up there. We'll pop it up, but we'll see it. You can go over to our website, so onto our online gallery and stuff, and see it there. Some of the photo stuff, make sure you visit the website. We'll put the links for everything that we do everywhere. Those of you watching this on YouTube, watching it in the classroom, you know right where it is. But we put links and stuff and the reference photos and stuff for you there to look at and download, and if you want. And here it is, my little stick. I just saw I came in and hit this edge of the nose, so I do want to bring that out just a bit. He has that there. You'll find the links. You can go in and download photos and everything, and you'll see the final photo. We'll put some final photos up. Always check the descriptions in all of our videos, and you'll see the links to everything that we do, what I use, and all that kind of stuff there. And don't forget to hit like. Appreciate it. Make a comment if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. Comment, and because this painting came after one lady that asked me to paint a golden retriever, and and I did that other one back there, Premier Coup, and this one, nice little fun little Watson. So if you want to see something, make sure you comment, and I'll show you how to do it in acrylics. We'll have a bit of fun, okay? I'm just going to put a little more light in here, and then I'm going to go call it done. And here we go, just a bit. All right. Well, could have maybe a touch more. It's nice. I'm looking at it, what you're looking like there. I can't right there. I can see, yeah. Sometimes, stepping away from when you're up close like this, that's always good. Get up and get back. Okay, I got to let you go. Thanks very much, guys. I'll see you on the next one. We'll do some more. We still have glass, and a whole bunch of other people have asked for other things, and I'll see you on some of the others. And I'm starting a new challenge. It's coming next week. Watch for it. I'll see you later.